Okay, I'd like to call the February 20th meeting of the Forest Hills Board of Education meeting to order. If we could all stand and welcome the students from Brownie Troop 8219 who will lead us in the pledge. Thank you so much. Hang on one second. One second. Thank you here for leading us so wonderfully. All right. Wait. One second, if you will. All right. This is a meeting of the Forest Hills Board of Education held in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a community public hearing. There is time for public comment during the meeting as indicated in agenda item number 10. And as one little special aside today, as we talked about last month, we are going to try to be a little bit more in line with best practices and trying to be more responsive. So we are starting with a comment card system this month. And we would really appreciate the public's cooperation as we try this out to see if it works very well or not well. We're not sure. We'd just like to give it a try. So if anybody would like to make public comment today, there are cards back over here underneath the Star Rangers. So please go ahead and fill out those cards, put them in the basket, and they will be collected right before the beginning of the superintendent's report. So now with that, thank you very much. Mr. Pels is the principal here at Pine Ridge. My 3 kids had the privilege of attending Pine Ridge, and there was one glorious year when all 3 of them were in one building, had the same start and end time. It was wonderful. I loved it. I miss it. But without any further ado, Mr. Pels.
Second, today, we're going to have a couple students. You can see an end product. So what we did is we actually took some first graders at kind of the beginning of the process, and then we have a few fourth graders that are kind of at the end of their process here at Pine Ridge, so you can just get a little snippet of what that writing looks like. Last, we're also going to talk a little about collaboration, and it's such an important integral piece to writing, and it really starts in the first grade and in the kindergarten between the teacher and the student and the students and the students, and then as they progress, the students actually become the ones facilitating that conversation, and I'm going to share that a bit with you today. As I start things off, and I'm kind of a mover, it's hard for me to stand behind just a podium here. I'm going to kind of move this way a bit, and it's also hard because I'm used to facing a crowd this way, so it's really weird that I'm turned around with everything. Basically, how workshop works, and I believe I've got a button on this one too. Let's see here. Good. Tested everything here. So things start out with a 10-minute mini lesson. And in this mini lesson, you might think about like when you were young. Teachers probably gave you back a paper. It had 15 different items on it that you had to work on, which at times makes it really difficult because you don't have that focus. During this 10-minute period, what teachers do is they are strategy-based, they are focused. For example, you are going to see a short video with kindergarten where they're working with a checklist. And when they have this checklist, they are using that to try and adapt their paper and make changes to their paper. In first grade, I have a short video, and with this first grade video, you are actually going to see where students were reading earlier in the day, and they put Post-its where they thought the author had amazing pieces to their work, and When it came to writing workshop, they now had to apply it. So they were taking those Post-its and moving it into writing. And then last, in 4th grade, in the video, you're going to see some work on conclusions. With that being said, there's also that piece of collaboration. And I'm going to start with a 20-second snippet of a mini lesson. This is taking place in Miss Martin's room. She's an amazing new teacher that has just started out here at Pine Ridge. She is back there right now watching from behind. I know you told me not to say anything, but she's just done an amazing job this year. I'm going to quickly show a little snippet. And again, what I want you to notice is during this time, students are up in front of the room. They're together in a community in the environment that's built for collaboration between all the students.
Okay, so we talked about these 3 things that you need to have in a conclusion. You need to use a transition word, so check your blue paper. You need to restate your thesis in new words, and then leave your reader with something to think about or a challenge. So these are actually 3 separate conclusions written by a 4th grader. The next time you want something, stand up and say it. You might be surprised with how things turn out. Okay, so see how that's not a question, but it kind of leaves your reader with a challenge? Sometimes people, like Doris's father, surprise us. We think they are one way, but really they turn out to be different.
So I am just going to pause it here for a minute. But when we have a mini lesson like this, what we do is a lot of times we're sharing real portions of student writing. So students can see exemplar pieces. So that way when they move into the independent practice or when they are talking with their teacher or other students, they are able to then apply this knowledge to then perfect their writing and use each other's strengths within the classroom. Luke, I see you shaking your head, so that's good. I must be saying something right? Yes, Luke is in this 4th grade class, so. As I looked at collaboration, I told you I was going to share a quick video of a 1st grade classroom. We have 2 1st grade students that are with us today. You'll get a chance to hear their work in just a minute. But what I want you to notice in this is we've got a great teacher, Holly Grendel. She is working one-on-one with her students. This is our collaboration time where the teachers will move from student to student around the classroom. At times there's groups. At times they're just working one-on-one. This is where I told you this student had read some reading earlier in the day. They were marking down fantastic areas they wanted to model off the author. Now what she is doing, because she's kind of quiet, I'll be honest, when I was recording, she was kind of like a little bit nervous, so she's a little bit quiet in this. But at the same time, she is taking those great ideas from the true author and then moving it over into her writing piece. And I'm just going to kind of share a bit here. Her book is down at the bottom. She was looking at earlier today. That Post-it is what she marked, saying it's something she wanted to try with her writing. Mrs. Grendel is kind of facilitating and reminding her. And if I pause it there with some of the youngers in kindergarten and 1st grade, this is a lot of times how we do it, one-on-one. So that way the relationships are built. Students then are starting to learn how to collaborate, how to get their ideas out. So then as we move up into 2nd, 3rd, and then 4th grade, and if I move up to 4th grade real quick, you will see that the collaboration even gets to a higher level. And in this video, again, sometimes it's tough to hear because I was trying to record but not get too close where it threw them off. This group right here, the teacher really started to facilitate things and almost had to step away because students start to talk about the text, about the writing, and start to share their ideas and their strengths to try and build upon one another. So let me just share this real quick.
But she doesn't really show it, but she doesn't believe it, so it doesn't really count. Everyone thinks she's smart and like really good at poetry. Well, everybody underestimates her.
They're starting by talking about characters.
Caring, friendly, friendship.
And they kind of finished, because I know it's hard to hear, they started by talking about characters within their text. And, where those characters kind of stood in the text, what feelings they had. From that point, they really went into some similes and words that were similar that they could use. And they were helping one another kind of build upon what they currently had so they could use a more rich vocabulary within their writing. And again, it's really impressive to see. It takes a long time, and really kudos to the teachers because they really have to teach students how to build upon their conversations. How to listen is probably the biggest key with that. But they've really done this, and what I would like to do now is I would like to actually bring up a couple of students with some of their final products from this, because it just kind of gives you an idea of like where their writing is really going. Another huge piece with this workshop model is if it's done in every classroom, it allows a student to focus on the learning, not what is this individual teacher doing, because it is very similar class by class. With that being said, girls, would you like to come up for a second? Start with both of you. This is Callista and this is Anna. And you know what? I've got a little mic right here because I know that that podium's pretty high. I told them they could face this way because with everybody out here, would you like to start us off, Anna? Okay. Can I hold this? Okay, I'll let you go ahead and read.
So I'm doing a book all about dogs. Dogs are fun pets to have. Dogs are also mammals just like us. Dogs have 4 legs. Baby dogs are called puppies. A dog has lots of body parts, like ears, eyes, and a nose, tail, back, mouth, belly, and legs and paws. Every part of a dog's body helps a dog live. A dog's body is very strong, so a dog is very strong. Dogs' bones can break, but the bones are very strong, and dogs' bodies are kind of like ours. If you buy a dog, you will need to feed it every day and try to give it some attention. And to make it easier, you can buy some dog toys. Top male names. Top male dog names. Bear, Buddy, Charlie, Cooper, Jack, Rocky, Duke, Toby, Tucker, and Max. Top female dog names. Bella, Lucy, Daisy, Lola, Luna, Molly, Sadie, Sophie, Bailey, and Maggie. Types of dogs. Great Dane, Pug, Papillon, Westie, Bulldog, Labrador Retriever, Mini Schnauzer, Husky, Golden Retriever, Poodle, Labradoodle, and a Mastiff. Fun facts about dogs. A Golden Retriever named Augie has 5 tennis balls in her mouth at one time, setting a world record. A park in Cambridge, Massachusetts, USA has been powered by dog hair. Dogs paint to cool themselves. All about the author, Anna Snodrowska. Birthday, July 28, 2015. Age, 7. Hi, my name is Anna Snodrowska. I was born in Belarus, and I like being active and relaxing. I think everything's fun. And I've been writing. It's fun to write. Also, thank you for reading this one. Bye.
Excellent job, Anna. Callista, would you like to read this? And I have one more. This is Callista.
Specials at Pine Ridge Elementary School. At Pine Ridge, we have 5 specials: reading center, music, gym, art, and Spanish. Our principal is Mr. Peltz. He is very nice. We have 500 kids in our school. We do 1 special each day. We get out of our classroom for specials. At library, we shop for 2 books that we like.
Sure, you want to explain it? Go ahead, Lynn. You want to go right up here? I can explain it right to you.
Me and Abby are two students from Mrs. Martin's class that would like to read to you our literary essays that we have been working on for the past couple weeks. So this is mine. Do you know what it feels like to be different? Because of her twisted foot, Ada has felt like a fish out of water her entire life. In The War That Saved My Life by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley, a girl named Ada and her brother escape from London and their cruel mother during World War II and meet a loving Susan Smith. But because of her cruel mother, Ada is adventurous, troublesome, and stubborn. Some people might say Ada is adventurous because she enjoys exploring the village and the world around her on her beloved pony, Butter. One time, after saving a soon-to-be friend, she got lost and found the ocean. After returning home, she explained what she had seen. I saw something strange from the top of the hill, far away, like grass stretched out a long way and flat, but different, blue and gray. When the sun hit it, it looked shiny. I chose this quote because it shows Ada being interested in something she has never seen before. Another word to describe Ada is that she is troublesome. One event where she caused trouble was the sewing machine incident. When Susan left for a meeting, Ada used her sewing machine without permission and broke the needle. My second reason Ada is troublesome is she tried to get her stubborn pony to jump over a wall. Ada also has a habit of sneaking out without permission, and her ma'am trapping her in a cupboard most of her life did not help her to cause less trouble. Ada doesn't want to be a troublemaker, but she has a difficult time controlling her emotions. My last trait for Ada is that she is stubborn. One time she was strong-willed was when she kept declining the colonel's invitations to tea parties. Another reason Ada is stubborn is that she does not apologize. One time she did this was when she crushed Jamie's paper airplane and never apologized. When people do things she doesn't like, she loses control of her emotions and then she gets all fired up. My last reason Ada is stubborn is that she doesn't want to go to school. I think she has this opinion because she cares about what people think of her. She is self-conscious about this because her ma'am made her feel so terrible about herself. In conclusion, because of her wicked past mother, Ada is adventurous, troublesome, and stubborn. The next time you notice someone that feels out of place or different, try to understand them. You never know what might happen.
Fish in a Tree literary essay. Have you ever felt like a fish out of water? Allie, in the book Fish in a Tree by Linda Millay Hunt, knows all about that feeling. Allie struggles to read and write. She starts to give up, but then she realizes, maybe I'm having trouble isn't the same as I can't. Allie is very talented, but is too hesitant to show it. Allie is hesitant when it comes to making friends. For one thing, Allie is underestimated. People tell her that so often that she actually starts to believe them. She starts shutting people out and tries her best to ignore the people who bug her, but she has a lot of trouble doing that. Allie is hesitant because she barely reacts to Shay's ignorant comments. She barely ever tells anyone about how Shay treats her. Allie also isn't herself around Shay. Well, to be fair, she really isn't herself around anyone. Allie is also hesitant because she relies on Albert and Keisha to fight her battles. Getting deeper into the subject, Shay bullies Allie and Allie doesn't know how to defend herself, so Keisha and Albert do it for her, which doesn't give her an opportunity to learn to stand up for herself. Allie is intelligent because she makes up creative excuses to get out of trouble. For example, Allie made a fake sling to get out of reading and writing. Allie is also intelligent because she figured out all the mystery boxes. Her teacher put mystery objects in boxes and the students had to guess what was inside. She even figured out the mystery box that had stumped students for years. Allie is also smart because Mr. Daniels taught her to play chess. Chess is a difficult game, but Allie understood right away. Allie is kind because she tore a bouquet of flowers and gave half to Keisha. Diving deeper into this, Keisha had been picking petals off her bouquet before a concert. A teacher caught her and took away her bouquet. Allie gave half her bouquet to Keisha, but then the teacher took away both their bouquets. Allie is also kind because she helped her brother learn to read. Well, Allie didn't teach him. Once Mr. Daniels taught Allie to read, Allie asked if he could teach her brother to read because he had told her he had trouble reading and writing. Allie is kind because she gave Albert advice for taking care of his bullies. It wasn't only advice, it was solid advice too. Albert realized that he needed to be confident and speak up to get his bullies to stop. All in all, I'm trying to say that Allie has a lot of potential. She's just not aware that she does, so she isn't very confident.
Amazing job, Amy. So first of all 4 of you, fantastic job. I appreciate that you shared your writing. All 4 of you should be very proud of yourselves because, like I said, all 4 of you just have fantastic writing. When they do workshop, they have a lot of choice with their writing, and they selected the pieces that they were going to present tonight. I'm going to have the 4 of you kind of move right back over that way, and fantastic job. We have one final piece tonight, and this final piece with workshop, it's not just in reading and writing that we can do workshop. We have a phenomenal art teacher named Sarah Bruja, and she was a regular education teacher. She's become an art teacher, and we are the luckiest ever to have her at Pine Ridge. Sarah, can I bring you over really quick with a few students because we have one last surprise? And then we're going to let you move on with the meeting.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sarah Bruja. So as Mr. Peltz was explaining about how workshop model often takes place in the gen ed classroom, with my experience in the gen ed classroom, I've since kind of brought that into the art room. So our 4th graders, I've got a couple 4th graders up here. If you want to introduce yourself, just say your name.
I'm Addie O'Brien. I'm Charlotte Wilczek. I'm Claire Heller. I'm with Langston.
And these 4th graders took on a unit all about portraits. Mr. Peltz had mentioned that in the workshop model in the gen ed classroom, there's lots of choice. And so bringing that into the art classroom, these students were given the opportunity to choose anyone to draw a portrait of over like a 5-week lesson process that kind of went along with that mini workshop model. And these students decided to draw pictures of our new board members. So we wanted to surprise you here with some pictures. So if you want to go ahead and turn.
Show these guys to you.
Yeah,
These are pretty amazing. Like I said, their work. Do you want to share real quick? Do you want to hold them up? And then we'll show you guys too
Yeah, you
because
want to turn around?
pretty
Friends,
impressive.
turn around this way. Yeah.
You can see their pictures. Do you want to share what for? Because I know you worked really hard. But see if you can find your person.
Yeah.
Watch out for the cords. Thank you once again. Fantastic job, all of our artists. And with that, I just want to extend one final invite that you are welcome to come out to Pine Ridge at any time to kind of see everything that's going on out here, just because this is only a quick snapshot. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This was absolutely amazing. I'm so impressed by kids who are able to get up and do this because that is not easy to get up in front of a group of people. And the writing from the 1st graders was awesome. And then it's amazing to see just in 3 short years what they were doing as 4th graders.
Okay.
Holy cow, that's a lot of growth. I mean, I thought it was fantastic, and this picture is fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. Does anybody else
You
have
do
any-
look good in that picture. No, I think it's, first graders and I think, was it 4th graders or 5th graders?
4th.
Excellent job. I have a 2nd grader at home, so I see a lot of 1st, 2nd grade kind of writing, and your writing was so well organized, and your thoughts were so clear, and you had such great detail words in there. And I could also see, even though you didn't show us, your handwriting was excellent, and your illustrations to go with your work also looked like you really took your time and did your best effort. And I'm so thankful that you were willing to share that with all of us tonight.
And I told them that they could dismiss just because as it's getting later.
Yes. Uh-huh. Thank you.
All right, that was terrific. Okay, we now have a couple of presentations to go through. Mr. Beam?
Yes, it is really a wonderful honor. We're celebrating art at its earliest levels, and now we get to celebrate it really at just a stunning level that has received recognition for the state contest, art contest, for all artists at the high school level throughout the state of Michigan. So, would Sydney Kuipers, if Sydney is here, will you please come forward? Yes, thank you, Sydney. Come forward. You want to give me this? I am so proud to pronounce the first place winner of the State of Michigan Art Contest for 2023, Miss Sydney Kuipers, who is a student at Forest Hills Northern High School. And Sydney, I'm going to show your artwork here just so we can see. This is Sydney's artwork. And Sydney, could you just explain a little bit about what the theme was, what prompt you were given as an artist?
So the theme was what makes Michigan strong. So I chose all the things that make Michigan strong, in my opinion.
Wonderful. And you can see Michigan Strong there at the bottom, written there, and so many landmarks throughout our state. Cindy, could you talk just a moment about your art journey, when you began? I don't know if you began with your art in a serious way when you were in elementary school, and the teachers as well that you've had.
I really started in 8th grade. I took a draw, paint, print class with Mrs. Hardig, and that's when I really started to do art more seriously, and then I've kind of continued throughout high school.
Fantastic. And we won't hold you to it, but what's next for your future beyond high school? Do you know yet?
Nope.
All right. Well, keep on doing great art. We are so very proud of you and proud of you representing our community at the state level. It's really fantastic. And this piece now, where is it located currently?
My living room.
It's in your living room. Wonderful. All right. Well, we would love to display it in our school district as well, on loan, if you will, for a little while. But congratulations. I don't know if any other board members have anything else they want to add.
I just couldn't help but say, Sydney, 8th grade is when you started this kind of art, but I very much remember you in the 4th grade musical, The Jungle Book. You were an artist even back then. So I was so thrilled to see your name. I remember you very fondly from that show.
Thank you. I do have some prints available if anybody is interested.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sydney. Our next presentation tonight is to provide some information for our Board of Education, and we wanted to do this at our public board meeting as well, regarding our media materials and processes and procedures. We talked a little bit about this last week at our committee meetings with the Finance Committee and the Curriculum Committee, and I want to share some information with you here tonight. I want to talk a little bit about our processes and procedures and things that we've learned about those as we've looked at this more closely. I want to talk about a draft document that is really options for families that we have going forward and trying to help our families who have a variety of different ideas and preferences for their own children when it comes to media materials. And we want to talk about how we think we can collaborate and accommodate all those differences and preferences out there as well. We want to talk about our ongoing work in this area and what's coming next, and then open it up for question or discussion among our members of the board here as well. So, a little bit about our processes and procedures. As we think of our media centers, we're proud to have them in every single one of our school buildings. We have been blessed with outstanding people who have staffed our media centers over the years as we think of our librarians or media specialists that we've had over the years. And as we think of people that served in a variety of roles, we've called them different things at different points in time throughout the years. Now we have our media materials coordinators that are in our positions in our media centers. There used to be media secretaries on that. But with our history over time, as we, like so many other districts over the last decade, and it really began around 2011 when we saw a cut to per pupil funding of $470 a student, that we had to unfortunately eliminate positions. And some of the reductions we made were in the area of our media specialists. So these are folks who are part of our teachers association and people that are specially trained at the graduate level in media sciences. And we went to a couple of district-wide media specialists, and then even there, some years back, those positions were eliminated as well. For decades, I will say, we've been able to operate our media centers with great support and with good practices and procedures in place that were overseen by those professionals that came through our system. As we saw that change and we weren't staffing those positions, we saw some inconsistencies come in. We had, as we do all the time, we had people come and go in our secretarial ranks. And then we changed those positions from media secretary to media materials clerks. And even there, we have some who have been with us really for many, many years on end, a couple decades or more. And then we have others who are very new to the position, as we think of those media centers all across our 18 different schools on that. And so that difference in people in terms of their time and experience in the position is something that has brought in, as we've looked at this a little bit more, with some newer staff members, the need for additional training. And as I look back on this over the last several years, this is an area where we haven't provided that training at the district level. It's one of the things, as I talk about what's coming next, one of the things that we want to correct and make sure that we're doing. So that training goes through a whole variety of things. So for instance, acquisition of materials. As I've said before, we have over 250,000 books throughout the district, and we have books for exactly the things you saw today. Being immersed in books helps to build great writers. That's part of the language arts, as we see that all throughout our curriculum. And so we have books and books and books all over. We want to make sure that the books we have are not only accessible to every single student, because we first begin with students learning how to read, a foundational skill that pays dividends all throughout one's life. And then we move to students really reading to learn. And we want to make sure that we've got books that are representative for students at all of those different levels and all different interests. We also want to make sure that we have books that every single student can see themselves reflected in some of the books that they read. And we also want books where every single student can look into that book as though they're looking into another world that they haven't yet experienced or they don't know anything about, that they can learn. And that metaphor of seeing yourself reflected as a mirror and looking through a book as a window on a world that you don't yet know, that's a wonderful thing that we want to make sure we bring in with our 250,000 books all throughout our system. We know that the acquisition of materials is an important piece as well, because if we didn't acquire new materials, we'd be left with, who knows, stuff from the 1960s or 1950s all throughout our media center, and we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we have something that is vibrant, that builds a love for reading among our students, and that builds a habit of reading every single day. And our teachers and our staff members are helping to do that all the time. As we've looked at this issues around processes and procedures, around acquisition of materials, I know when we have a book that a teacher wants to read as part of a whole class unit or a lesson that we have, say, at the high school level, we actually have a process where that comes before the Board of Education Curriculum Committee, and there's a 30-day review of that book. And then once the board brings that forward for approval, then that book is used at the classroom level for a whole class read. What we have at the media centers, though, as we've looked into this is one of the areas where we need to update our processes, because quite frankly, our processes have been inconsistent. In some buildings, our media materials coordinators are looking very closely at what's going on in the curriculum, where they can help support teachers, just like we see here at Pine Ridge, at the classroom level, and what type of materials maybe we have that we can bring to the classroom, or what type of materials don't we have that we can lend or loan from, say, the Kent District Library, or where we need to acquire our own materials. And those media materials coordinators, we call them MMCs, work with our teachers, work with our principals to make sure we can order those materials. Again, in other buildings, we've had inconsistencies. That process hasn't always taken place. And instead, what we see around ordering materials is a vendor might say, hey, we have the red package for you, or we have the yellow package for you. And there might be 48 or 62 different books in that package, and they just came in. There really wasn't a close understanding of what were all the books and titles in that package and what need were they fulfilling. So that's one of the things as we've looked at that around acquiring materials, and our media materials coordinators have agreed that this is something that we want to make sure is a deliberative process. It isn't something that we're outsourcing to a vendor someplace that simply says, here's a tranche of books that we can send your way at a value price in some way, shape, or form. Also, weeding of materials. We know that keeping the collection of materials updated and relevant is an important aspect. And in the past, this was something called out in our administrative guidelines that our librarians and media specialists did. They went around and they looked at the collection and they looked to see, are there materials here that are out of date? Are there materials here that contain information that's no longer relevant? Perhaps it's about the 9 planets in 1972 or something like that. They're also looking to see, are there materials here that aren't supporting the curriculum in some way, shape, or form, that don't have a tie-in with the curriculum? Are there materials here that don't generate student interest? Students aren't checking them out. Again, we have about 250,000 books in our district. They're not all in our media centers. Many of them are also in our classrooms as well, as we have more and more classroom libraries, especially at the elementary level, as students are learning to read. Their books are right at their fingertips, as we saw in the video today even. So when we look at the shelf space that we have, it's prized space in our media centers. So we want to make sure, as we think of the really hundreds of millions of titles that are out there, the materials that we do have on those shelves are meeting student interest, are supporting our curriculum, are helping grow our readers and grow our learners all the way through. So the weeding of materials is an important aspect of the processes and procedures. Again, in the past, that was delegated to our media specialists and librarians, with those positions being vacant. In some buildings, some of our media materials coordinators have felt comfortable doing that work. In other buildings, they haven't. And so as we were talking just last week at the committee meeting, Mallory, you had mentioned that the Kent District Library was helping another middle school in another district in the area, and they consulting, and they found that a large percentage of books were subject to their weeding criteria on that. So those are things that we need to look at as well, as we make sure, again, that we're using that shelf space in a way that's garnering student interest on that, and we're furthering that desire that we have, that all of our students are reading every day. So those vacant leadership positions, that's something I want to talk about as we go forward here. And we want to make sure with those positions filled in that these processes and procedures, again, in many of our buildings, we have really outstanding media material coordinators. And in other buildings, those coordinators are very new and they're looking for more support. So I'll talk about how we're using, again, a collaborative process to bring about that knowledge and skill transition and cross-pollination among our MMCs. And then an updated MMC handbook. I'll talk about that in just a moment as well. Next, I want to talk about a draft idea that we have. Again, what we're looking to do is how can we help partner with our families to provide options for them as we think about this 250,000+ books that we have in our media centers, in our classrooms. We hear from families, and we've heard from families at our board meetings for many, many months of concerns that some families have. Our belief is that all books represent a form of knowledge, and we're not looking to ban knowledge in some way, shape, or form. That being said, there are books that we want to make sure are available to all of our students where some families, some parents may look and say, that's not a book that I want for my child. So how do we do that where parents can make decisions for their child, but not for everyone else's children? That's something we can leave to each individual. So here's some, again, some draft ideas around this, is that we'd have some options going forward that we can provide to parents and families. One is that it could exist exactly the way it does now. Media center access and books access as it currently exists, and students have the ability to self-select books. There's a wide percentage of our parents that know our media material coordinators, that work with them, that know their teachers, that ask their children what are they interested in, what are they reading, and they're comfortable with this type of access level. Then we'd have a second option here about looking at the access to the media center with some limits that parents might be able to, just as they do with apps on phones right now, parents can set a parental setting to say, well, before my child downloads that app, I want to have a notification sent to me first about what that is. In this case, that's also an idea that we see rolling out going forward. There may also be a situation where a parent is prompted that, hey, your student wants to check out this book, and parents may say, I want to be prompted anytime on that. There may be other situations where the parent said, look, I'm comfortable with 99.9% of the books, but these here, let me know if my child has an interest in a particular book. Or there may be a situation, again, where parents say, there's a certain author. They may say, and again, parents have talked to me in different ways and said, I don't like J.K. Rowling. There are others who say, I love J.K. Rowling. Hey, if that's your thing where you want to say, my child doesn't access that particular author, you would be able to do that in sort of a pre-selection mode on that as well. There would be a third option that we have here labeled number 3, and that's you can have access to the media center, but you'd bring in your own books. We use our media centers for a variety of situations, a variety of learning that happens there. And what we see is that our media centers are vibrant places with lots of circulation at our elementary levels. As we go up in grade level, we see fewer and fewer students, say at our high schools, accessing and checking out books from our media centers. And there's a strong difference. We'd see at the elementary level, thousands and thousands of books accessed throughout the school year, and say at a high school media center where we have an even bigger student population, maybe not even 1,000 books checked out in circulation in a given year. So we see differences on that as students grow older on that going forward. And one of the other things we would look at is if parents are wondering, hey, I would like to set aside some time to come in with the media materials coordinator and my child just to look to see what books are there, we want to make that accessible to our parents as well. We know that we have books not just in our media centers, but also in our classrooms. We have been very intentional on this area over many years now to make sure that all of our students, especially at the elementary level, have access to books in our classrooms on a daily basis. And again, these are books that are designed to help students that are learning how to read build their own fluency, build their own comprehension, build their own stamina, build their own confidence in their reading as they go. And they're reading a variety of different things, some cases very, very short books. In some cases, they're moving on to chapter books and the like as we go forward. The idea here is, again, that students have ready access and students are reading something. In the cases of our younger elementary grades, they're reading multiple books in a given day. But everyone is reading something every day as we're building that love and that habit for reading all the time. As we look at this, we have books that come in. Sometimes people are looking to donate books. Sometimes we know our the Forest Hills Public Schools Foundation has helped to bring books to our classrooms as well. And teachers are working with students and also with families about things that kids are reading all the time. And we know in talking to our teachers that sometimes parents are reaching out to the teachers and saying, I'm comfortable with, again, my student accessing the classroom library. Sometimes parents have said on a couple of occasions, let me know if my child is checking out book X, Y, or Z on that. So this is an area where we're looking for additional options for parents and families. Right now, there's an opt-in option, or as always, as we've always had, if there's material in the classroom that parents want to have an alternate option, we have that available as well. And parents, in some cases, would be and have sent books from home for their children to read during these times as well. As we look forward as to what is it that's coming next in this area, and I'll just say that the area of books and library and media centers hasn't been something that has been tops on our list in looking at this from processes and procedures. It's something that has run in the background over many, many years. And we've had many other things that has been top of mind as we think of our students' well-being, as we've come through a pandemic, as we've looked to equip all of our teachers with the resources they need to build great readers, as we've looked to address learning needs in all of our students. Looking at these processes and procedures has not been something, again, that has been right front and center. But now it's something that, as we've looked closer, we can see there are more needs that are here. So one of the things we want to do is to develop an updated handbook for our media materials coordinators with clear guidelines on how we acquire books. Again, in the past, it was something that a media specialist or librarian worked on the acquisition. Well, in the absence of having those positions filled for many years, that process of acquisition has become inconsistent from building to building. The same thing with book weeding. As we look at our collection and making sure that we're using that shelf space so that it's filled with books that students want to read, that they're accessing on a regular basis, that it's filled with a wide variety where all students can see themselves reflected, and that all students have the ability to look into a book and have a vantage point onto a world that they did not previously know. And one of the other things is around book borrowing. So one of the things I learned in, again, a closer dive at this, is that book borrowing could happen from upper level to a lower level. And that brought up some concern for me, and I instructed a district team last year to make sure that we didn't have books at the elementary level that had mature content in them, that we were looking to make sure that we didn't have some technical glitches in the system that was taking place. And we want to make sure that we're collecting data on all these pieces as well. We do have an electronic system that takes care of all of the books that are checked out, books that are acquired, books that are weeded, but we haven't been using that consistently in all of our buildings. And again, I think that goes back to training. Some of our MMCs are very well versed in this, and others are newer, and we haven't been providing that training. So we want to be able to do that as well. So all this leads to increased training and professional development for our media materials clerks. Again, we have some outstanding people in these positions that know library science very well, but they weren't in the position that we've had vacant, which is the district media coordinator or district librarian, or even when we had librarians and media center coordinators back several years ago, those positions haven't been filled. So that's another piece that we want to look at. I'll talk about that in just a moment. Our MMCs are meeting. In fact, we have right here at Pine Ridge our wonderful media materials clerk, Sarah Zietz, who's got a strong background in media sciences, along with Teresa Vance at Northern Hills Middle. And Sarah's going to lead at the elementary level. Teresa will lead at the middle level. And then Yvonne, who also is a certified teacher, she will lead at the high school level on that. And Gabby Kokonakis, one of our instructional coaches, is facilitating our 3 media materials coordinators coming together to develop an updated coordinator handbook on all of these policies and practices and procedures that we have going forward. What's next? We also want to repost the district media specialist position. When we don't have that position filled and we don't have any specific positions in our districts filled as librarians, we're left with these situations where some of these practices and procedures are inconsistent from building to building. And then we're left with a situation where a district administrator, such as myself, has to step in, and that's not a situation that we want. That's not something that I want. You don't want me stepping in to micromanage food service. You don't want me stepping in to micromanage books on those things either. And that's not something that I seek to do on that. But having a media materials coordinator handbook, having leadership that can help as a district media specialist, and then to communicate all of these updated processes and procedures to families and staff members, that's something that can support everyone as we go forward on these pieces. So that's the information that I wanted to share with you, and then just open it up for questions and comments from members of the board. I know we had some good initial discussion as we talked about this last week, and looking forward to continue this here tonight as well.
Okay, that was a great report. Being that I could be at committee meetings last week, we all know that we got some correspondence from an organization called NCAC,
Yeah.
and they seem to be concerned, and you seem to clarify the fact that we don't ban books in Forest Hills. But everything you tells me leads me to believe we need to upgrade as far as our personnel. We need to get people in places to take care of our materials, and we
Yep.
have plans to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when those people are in place, they're going to have a handbook, they're going to have training, and we are going to make sure we have the right people in the right places to vet the system and weed these books according to, I think some of the principles you mentioned were making sure it's tied to curriculum, if it doesn't generate student interest, and if it's not accurate or current content.
Sure.
Some of the books we've removed in the absence of media center, media clerks, were those kind of books? I mean, are we pulling books that maybe it was not current, or it wasn't factual, or it was past its prime? What is our guideline, 5 years?
Yeah, it's all the above. The guideline doesn't have a specific year denoted in them. It's just books that have little or no interest from students on that. We think we probably have many books, more than what we've seen weeded from the collection thus far, that could fit that criteria on that. But it runs the gamut, everything from Rin Tin Tin to Hunt for the Red October to reference materials that have outdated information in them. So it's a variety of pieces on that. And again, there's probably more work to be done there that has just been left over the years as we've seen transition in personnel in our MMC positions in some of our buildings as well.
Okay, because I love that you said, we do not want district administrators to have to step in and do this.
No.
I love that we put
No.
our experts in the right places, and I was going to save this for board communications, but we like you doing the job of the superintendent, which has
Yeah.
always, in my experience, been processed through the lens of doing what's best for kids.
Yes.
And you all may remember that we assembled a 21st century task force, and it was charged with saying, do we do something with this gone boarding or classes like that? And they have tried, that group has tried to assemble the committee or give them the opportunity to come in and see that program, and that happened last week. And it was just one of those fun opportunities to say who we are, what we're trying to do, and the amazing things we offer kids. and love that that's what our superintendent is charged with, instead of trying to figure out all this stuff. So glad that you're creating a process and practices that let us do that. Because we have, I'm trying to think of the right adjective, supportive critic is one of the people that attended this, and I got a text this long, that this is 100% what our kids needs. You know, emotionally, some of these kids are struggling. Nobody really knows, as we heard from our beautiful artist, what they necessarily want to do next year, even if they're a senior. And the way Onboarding 2.0, I don't even know what we're calling it, is being put into place, it has taken off. Kids that are taking it love it, kids that aren't taking it are loving it, and that's where I'm hoping, I think we're all hoping, that we get to refocus your efforts. So thank you for taking some diligent time to put some practices and process in place that we can follow consistently and diligently. And I love that you're letting parents have some say, because we all at this table have very different decisions about which of these books we want and we don't. And it's a lot of work on your part, and I'm very grateful that you're saying, parents, if we are getting in the way or creating angst for you, we are happy to give you some say in that, so.
Well, yeah, what I think we want as educators is, we want kids reading every day.
Yep.
We want kids developing a love for reading that becomes a lifelong habit. We know that that can lead to so many more advantages for all of our learners, and that's what we're trying to do. We are not trying to get in the middle of wars about books or using books as a proxy for people's political beliefs about things. We're simply trying to say, how do we support all of our teachers? How do we support all of our students and reading books day in and day out? What we don't want to do is have a bunch of materials that sit there that students aren't interested in. And what we also don't want is something that is confusing or hidden to folks in some way, shape, or form. And we don't want technical errors in the system. I don't want a fourth grader accessing a book that's intended for a mature audience in some way, shape, or form on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And I would like to add, I think that you put it very well, that we have always had staff that this has been their job to do.
Yeah.
I know that there has been some criticism of books being removed without going through the adopted policy that the board has. But the board's policy is for how parents and guardians of students in the district are able to bring a book to the school's attention to say, hey, I think this might be inappropriate for everybody. But staff has always had the ability, and should have the ability, to look at the materials and, like you said, is it of interest? Is it relevant? Is it being checked out? And if not, clear those materials to make way for other ones that are, more appropriate and engage interests with the kids.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to house a fraction of the books that exist out there. We're not going to house books about, mergers and acquisitions that you'd find in a graduate school of business in some case. We're not going to house books about, intricate cutting-edge dental procedures that you'd find in a school of dentistry or something like that. We are providing books of general interest that, again, scaffold students' skill and development as readers initially, and then books that are helping expand students' learning as we go through the curriculum through high school graduation on that as well. And so it's, and that's the piece. On the front end, I think we need to be more intentional and thoughtful and deliberative about those materials that we're acquiring. And what I learned as I looked into this a little bit more closely, in recent years, some cases in some buildings, that's very much the case, and principals have been involved with it. In other buildings, it was, I have no idea how some of these books arrived, because maybe they came in from a person that held that position 2 people ago in that position, and we're looking and saying, perhaps they, again, ordered the Starlight package that a vendor brought forward that had 48 different books on a variety of topics, and they just came in, they were cataloged and put on the shelf. That is not the level of intentionality that our procedures historically have called out. That's not the level of intentionality that our media material coordinators who've been here for quite some time, nor folks with library science backgrounds would advocate on that. So we want to update those materials and procedures to reflect those best practices.
So that in the absence of formalized inter-district processes. We run into the situation that we have found ourselves in this week, and we don't want to be there again.
Right.
We want things to be intentional and organized. And when you say reporting guidelines for the development of the updated MMC handbook, that would include a rationale for those decisions and why they were made. And they don't need to necessarily be as drawn out as maybe the board policy committees would be in the event that a parent brought a book for reconsideration, but we would have a record of why those things were removed and the reason that they were removed.
Sure.
And by who.
Sure, absolutely, yes. We'd absolutely want that. Yep.
I appreciate the information as well. I appreciate the stance officially of the school not being the decider of what is appropriate and what's not appropriate, deciding what is past the line and what is in front of the line, because we know that that differs family to family and person to person. I like that idea. My question and it's a draft still, of course, is that, how different is that in your view from what is currently available to parents? I mean, right now with our opt-in, with our opt-out, this seems like paperwork that goes to everyone, and maybe that's how we want it, just so everyone can make the intentional choice.
Yeah.
But right now, today, a parent can say, I don't want this title, this title, this title,
Yes.
and we can do that, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think what we're trying to do on that is to make those procedures and options for parents more readily available and more easily combine that with some effortless technology. So ideally, we'd love to have a way where parents could look at an online catalog system and just make a mark on those in some way. I don't know that we can do that. That's one big reason why that says draft right there. But ideally, that's what we'd like to be able to do, so that, again, there isn't so many hoops that people would have to go through. And also, one of the things that we've heard over and over is that, we want to make sure that we're transparent with everyone. Our goal for having books, as I've said many times before, is develop great readers, great learners all the way through and well-rounded. We're not looking to restrict on the part of the district access in some way, shape, or form, but we're looking to try to provide tools for families that reflect their own preferences, whatever those may be.
I just have, too
Yep, we're
short,
good.
sorry. You mentioned a process that in the curriculum, the classrooms, there's a committee
Yes.
or something. Can you just kind of walk me, I mean, I have some additional questions from that, but can you just kind of walk me through what that looks
Sure.
like and how?
So while we see this less often today, we still do see it. The research now is such around reading that to develop a love for reading and a habit for reading for even more kids than just the ones who they seem to have a natural tendency to just pick up a book all the time. For other kids that may not have that, the research says provide choice, provide options for them on that. So if we're looking at something around historical fiction, instead of we're all going to read the same thing, there may be 6 or 8 or 10 different options. And we'd also share that with families as well when it's part of a classroom unit and a classroom read on that. But occasionally what we find is teachers will come forward and they'll say, I want to have all of my students read a particular book. And if it hasn't previously come before the school district's curriculum committee, we've had that intentional process, for as long as I can remember. It's been here as part of the district. So it goes back a couple decades plus, I think, on that. And it's very intentional, very deliberative, where a teacher would fill out a request form to have this book considered. They talk about what unit it connects to and how the book is going to support that curricular work. And then the book is presented to the board curriculum committee. The members of the board curriculum committee have been diligent over the years to more than just thumb through the book. Most times read the book and look at it and bring that forward. On very rare occasions have there been additional back and forth or query that may come forward. Our teachers do a great job in thinking about all of those settings where a book is going to amplify the lessons that they've got there in the curriculum on that. So that's the process. That's, again, intentional. It is thorough. It involves transparency. It involves ample amount of time for people to weigh in, that we have for those, what I call them, a whole class read. Everyone's going to read this particular book. We don't have that, and that's what we need. Not that same process, but more intentionality, more deliberation and connection as we think about acquiring materials that go into all of our media centers as well.
So I guess my question is, like, I know the draft that's there is really pertaining to media books.
Yes.
And my question and concern is going to be going back into, like, have we ever had a similar situation? What's coming, you know, like what's presented week after week, right? What's happened in our libraries and stuff of some of the book material that people don't want to have in there. Do we have a situation that we've had similar in the classroom with language arts, where, like what you're saying with the curriculum and stuff, where we've had a, like a book club thing within the classroom, the kids pick the books, and there's been, you know, parents bringing that up as far as, you know, like with the, like not, you know, not having with the curriculum
Yeah.
and stuff. I guess what I'm getting at is, if this process goes in place, I would like to see it extended to all of our books that we have at our school, to make sure that everything that we have is, you know, like how, like for instance, how the books get in and such. But I guess my question is have we ever had a situation at our school where parents have brought books up within the classroom that they've disagreed with, you know, with being in the classroom, I guess is what
I
I'm saying.
can't say that I would be aware of every conversation that a parent has had with a teacher around that. But I can say our teachers are very thoughtful and deliberative and knowledgeable about the books that are in their classroom. They'll often have a system that helps them understand a young reader's level of where they currently are at in their skill with reading, to be able to find books that are going to be appropriate for the next rung on the scaffold, if you will, for students. So our teachers have a really good sense of the books that are in the classroom and how they can help support students and their reading on that. So teachers, there's again, far, far, far fewer books that are available in the classroom than the media center, but teachers have a really good sense because those books are being used all the time on that. And teachers are constantly looking to be able to find books that are supporting the things that they're teaching in the curriculum, whether it's something in social studies or something in science, whether it's something, as we saw here tonight, that's about, have you ever been in kind of a sticky situation? Or have you ever been in a situation where you feel like the odd person out? And looking at those different themes and understanding where there's going to be books that connect there. I'm not aware of a parent that has brought something forward to me in my office to say, hey, in my child's 4th grade classroom, there's a selection of books here that just don't fit with our belief systems as parents or something like that. I'm not aware of something that's come that way to my attention in my office.
Can I just add too? I don't know, you can interrupt me if I'm misinterpreting what you're asking, Holly. I feel like when there is a book club unit, let's say in a classroom, and let's say that the genre is historical fiction, you need like 6 or 7 copies of each historical fiction book that you're going to provide to those students so that you can actually form these book clubs. I know that teachers have books that are parts of units of study, and those are all part of the adapted curriculum because they need large sets of those books. So those would have come through the curriculum committee and been approved. And then I know, just for a personal example, my own 8th grader, if they're not in a book club, but they're reading an individual book for a book report, let's say, I have the option I've always had the option as the parent to help my students select that book and then bring it into school, or sign a permission slip that she can or cannot check out books from any section of the library when they take a class trip to the library to get those books. I feel like a classroom library is more often, and I'm not saying every time, but more often used for, there's 10 minutes left at the end of a class. If you want to grab a book and do a free read, you can. If you want to check one out and use that. But I don't know if there's a lot of opportunities for like a book club per se, like you were asking, where the kids would be picking the whole, the book for their entire book club. I don't know if that is not what you were asking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying if you have it where it's set up in a class, I guess what I'm looking at is, we've been listening to comments being made about just the content of books. And I know not all books have obscene material to it, but we do have it. And the process I want to address and have us discuss about and put in place would be if, one, are we violating any obscene material law basis by having certain books in the library, certain books in the classroom? That would be one question I want to know. I want to know, like, with the process, we have a process for health class right now, right? Where you go through the Reproductive Health Advisory Board to bring forward sexual content and stuff. And I think that should carry over to a classroom and carry over into a media thing, because it's coming back out to our kids. I know you made a lot of great comments about kids with, just making, learning from it and being good readers and stuff. But graphic, obscene material, sadomasochistic content, gang rape and stuff does not seem like, readers become what they read is kind of what was mentioned tonight. And I'm like, that is not what I would like to see. It's violent. And if we're pumping out books in the library that are teaching violence in relationships, and on the other hand, we have a health class that is coming, an outside source coming in to teach about violence in relationships, it kind of seems, like we're on both ends of this, kind of playing both ends of the spectrum. What I'd like to see is a format that goes into place that just, we just listened to 2 kids tonight talk about dogs and what they're teaching in the class, right? And innocence of our kids. This is the time that they get to do it. So if the books that we're going to read is Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn, and, the things that we grew up with and stuff, not this graphic content that we're listening to every month and stuff. It's like, what's the process is? I want to know what the process is that, how did they get there? Like, I'm understanding this, you know what I mean? Like what you're walking through, but who decided what they're reading is good? And it's horrific.
Well,
It's horrific.
I would just say that there's a lot of great books that are developed every year that we see from authors that are publishing books right now on that. So while there are classics, we want to make sure that we're providing books that come from a wide array of interests that also support our curriculum as well in that regard. And again, we want to make sure that we've got books where every student can see themselves reflected in that book. At the same time, some of the books, many of the books that people have brought forward at public meetings to say they don't think this book belongs in the media center, interestingly enough, we don't see students having an interest in those books in some cases. And so those are things that we've looked at as well in that regard. So our students in the classroom, they're reading books that you heard about tonight. That is the norm, is students reading books that are of general interest. And again, as I think about thousands and thousands and thousands of students across the district reading every day, I do not have a situation, and I'm not hearing from principals and I'm not hearing from teachers saying that they have parents contacting them to say, boy, the book that my child read today or looked at today or something they have a deep concern about. That's not something I'm hearing. And I'm confident that I would hear that if that was something that was going on over and over. And I think that's also another reason why that this whole issue is something that we haven't looked at earlier, because it hasn't been something that has been ringing some sort of alarm bell in some way, shape, or form. But again, I think as we look at it, as I look at it, it's just been we've been focused on other things, and we haven't provided the training, the supports, and the leadership for the system-wide on this to address some of these practices and procedures on it, which is just going to create a more vibrant system for everyone involved. No, I'm sorry.
No,
No.
you may not say something right now.
This is
not the
not
public
public
comment.
participation right now.
So what I would say is also that I think with these policies and procedures that you're talking about, it's going to be addressing some of those things, because you're gonna, please stop, we are having our board meeting.
This is
Thank
not
you.
time for public participation.
Some of the things that you're talking about in terms of, it would be putting the policies and procedures in place to have specialists, excuse me,
Go ahead,
to
Kristen.
put specialists in place so that when new books are being acquired, somebody is looking at all of the books so that we can see, all right, yes, this is something that we want to have on the shelves. Yes, this does support our curriculum. This is an appropriate thing for this grade level, but not that grade level. And we are putting that procedure in place. Might there be some books in our shelves already right now that wouldn't get put on if we had had those people in the past? Perhaps. But then again, that's where we have our book review policy, where if a parent sees that there's something on the shelves that they don't like that's already there, they can bring it forward, and reading the little snippets at the board meeting isn't going to move the needle on those, but putting it through the process will.
And there are, so like at KDL, there are procedures in place when you bring books in, and there are specific renowned websites that they use to say, this is kind of the age appropriateness of these, and so that could be part of our policy, or, you know, a training on our MMCs that, hey, these websites are renowned of kind of putting the age ranges on those books. And again, yes, parents could disagree with that, absolutely, and that's that opt-in, opt-out, or just talking to the teacher and saying, hey, you know, I wasn't comfortable with this book that you brought home, and I think the teacher is the first level of that you go to, Kristen.
Right, yes. Well, Dan and I am excited to know that we would be reposting that media specialist position and increasing professional development for the media coordinators. I do have a concern to just raise and for, you know, to bring to your media specialist as this comes up, that as has been mentioned, all students should have access to mirrors in texts. And when there's a mention of if a book has not been checked out in a certain number of years, then this is something that should be pulled from the shelf. And I just want to point out, though, some particular books may not be checked out as often because the students they reflect may be rare. And that is one benefit to the classroom library is the teacher will get to know their students, understand which books they might be more interested in that other students wouldn't necessarily be interested in. So yoinking a book for a certain time period isn't really applicable. It made me think of the mention of how you wouldn't have a book on dentistry, and yet I think to myself, for 12 straight years I taught senior research paper and had a massive collection of completely random things no one ever checks out, and yet they do. Every once in a great while, a student does.
I think that's absolutely the case, and that's why it's helpful that these processes and procedures are at the building level. Yes, we're looking at the district level to say, make sure you're looking at X, Y, and Z, but to have these decisions at the building level, that makes all the sense in the world, because they know the students at that level. They know that there's a student coming forward that has emigrated here from country X, Y, or Z, and that we need more in this collection in that regard, as we think about our immersion students on that. So having all of that individualized information, that's essential, and that's also why this process works well at the building level. And it is clumsy when it's something that people who are, say, in my spot at the district level, get involved. That's not something that we seek going forward in any way, shape, or form as a long-term solution. That doesn't make sense on that.
Well, yes, absolutely. I think that's really important too for everyone in the community to understand, especially about the book challenge process, that the first step is to contact the teacher. It is to communicate with the teacher. They will know what's in their room. They will know why a student may have chosen a book or why it may have even been suggested, and we'll be able to offer alternatives, which, I mean, having been an English teacher for 20 years now, I have been familiar with and experienced situations in which a parent, it's interesting, Holly, that you had mentioned The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which has some really disturbing moments in it, some really inappropriate things that perhaps might not have come to mind of some of the people who have read passages that are sexual, but that are incredibly racist, incredibly painful, dehumanizing passages. And yet that continues to be read in schools and is considered to be, you know, for some, a rollicking tale of a young boy's Bildungsroman. But I have experienced situations in which there's a book that a parent has said, you know what, I don't want my child to read this book. What are we going to do? And I'm like, great, we have alternate books. We can even come up with assignments that are just adjusted a little bit to that book. I mean, I do know that's the common step, and I think why most of the time we don't hear about this, because it is handled right at the classroom level with the classroom teacher before it goes any further. So I mean, I know that's why our book policy right now starts with talk to the teacher, then go up the chain of command, because most of these issues are handled very quickly and easily at that level, and that might be why we haven't heard so much or seen so much come up to this level. So I'm just, you know, thinking on that topic. I mean, it's hard to, when talking about, do books relate to the curriculum, and should we pull them if they don't?
Yeah.
When all books relate to the English language arts curriculum, because it is the process of reading a book.
Yeah, I agree, Kristen. And there's, you know, it's sometimes once you mention something like, you know, mergers and acquisitions at the Graduate Business School, that you'll have a 13-year-old that says, I want to read that book. And, you know, so we're trying to, and now there's so many resources that are available through digital means as well. And, you know, that's another thing as we think about media material coordinators, as we think about people that have expertise in media sciences. There's a lot to, there's a whole new front that has kind of opened up as we think about digital materials and access to that, and digital literacy, and so many pieces on that as well. And I think that's one reason why we see a big drop-off in students accessing the collection that we have, say, at our high school media centers on that as well.
I have one question. So I think one of the things that some parents in this community are concerned with is that if books are weeded, are there still books that are representative of our entire population that are those mirrors and those windows? And so, how will that be in our policy? And I know we don't have it set yet, but I think that'll be an important part of the policy, is to say, how do we get books in that are representative, not just who is in our district, but also other experiences?
Yeah, I think that's critical, Mallory. I think as we think about that metaphor of mirrors, we have students from all over the world. We have students and families that represent all faith traditions and no faith traditions. We have students and families that come from a variety of different cultural backgrounds, economic backgrounds. We have families and students and staff members and everyone in the community from the LGBTQ community. We have people who come to us with disabilities that sometimes are clear to see and sometimes are hidden. We have students who are coming from different family structures, single-parent homes, being raised by grandparents or foster children. So these, again, are important considerations in why these discussions, being involved with people who are at the buildings, the schools where our children are at and our families are at, to make sure that we're cultivating those collections on that. Not only that they can see themselves reflected, but then also a mirror into other worlds. We say all the time, it's something that comes through our Global Learners Initiative, that you don't have to be one of to stand with. So I don't need to have a physical disability where I can't use my legs in order to be able to identify with and develop understanding and maybe even empathy and knowledge for someone who is in such a situation. So, and the same thing with a variety of pieces. Just because we're reading about the horrors of World War II doesn't mean that someone is more apt to, turn into a modern day dictator who's going to commit atrocities. And in fact, I think put in the hands of a skillful teacher, just the opposite on that. So I do think it's important that we, and I think it's why we have 250,000 books. We're drawing on a big wide range there. And I think it's also why it's important that we maintain connections with places like KDL that have even a much larger collection on that. Yeah.
And I think I just have a slight concern about opt-in, opt-out for teachers' libraries. Is it necessary? If we already have an opt-out,
Yeah.
I don't think I would want to make parents opt in.
Right. That's a good point. We've got draft on that, so we've got to do some more thinking on that, but I think that's a good point. I think the default of opting in, again, my experience of our teachers, the experience of our principals, is our classroom libraries have worked very, very well on a daily basis where, again, you've got dozens and dozens of books being read, teachers really understanding what's all in that library. As we look at some of these processes and procedures that have drifted on us a bit, that's really at the media center level outside of the classroom that we're looking to shore those pieces up. So that's good feedback. We'll do some more thinking on that.
Is it possible to put a rating system in similar to the movie theater? Where you have content that goes beyond, so you have rated G, PG, PG-13, R, and then go beyond that where it's, RX.
For 250,000 books, I don't know how that would be something that we could start from scratch, but I do think being able to provide for everyone, for teachers, for families, for parents, a way to have access to sites that are out there that do talk about different books and describe what's there in the book. And again, provide sort of either a recommended reading level. And I realize, Mallory, just as you said, those are, some people will look at that and agree, and other people may disagree, but at least to provide that information for folks and how they can access that and look at that, I think that would be a wonderful tool that's available to everyone.
Okay, one last little thing. I just might need a little clarification. So collections, we have media centers, we have classroom libraries, and now we've thrown in the book club. Are those not generally drawn from the classroom libraries?
I would venture to guess that an official book club in a classroom that is the sole purpose of teaching a genre or teaching some kind of literary device, those are pre-planned book clubs that a teacher would have received approval from the board to use those materials in their classroom. That's how I would have always done it. I'm assuming that's how you would do it. I don't know any other language arts teacher that is running a book club scenario in their classroom where they have not had to purchase multiple copies, 6 or 7 copies of 6 or 7 books, so that everybody has their own copy to read. They're not just 28 different books.
Okay. To add to that answer then also, I would know that, at least in my school, when we have book club books, we actually have a staff lounge where we keep these books in larger groups, because a classroom library probably only has 1 or 2 couple copies of high-interest books on it. Whereas if you need enough to be able to manage book clubs or literature circles, then they're probably stored more and they've been approved somewhere along the line.
And I don't know that you would want necessarily your students to have access to those. I mean, not because there's anything wrong, because you want to keep your copies, you don't want to lose them, and you also want to make sure that when it's time for those book clubs, there can be rich conversation, and like half the class hasn't already read it. which is one of the reasons we've come away from whole class novels, is because it doesn't really honor the fact
Yep.
that half the class has already read this book 3 other times. So I think a classroom book club is more like adopted curriculum than
And
a
approved.
classroom library.
And I'm just thinking about this discussion we're having about, we have had a couple parents write and say, I'm concerned about books my children are accessing, and I feel like it was book club context. But my understanding is that's exactly why we have a process. You're able to go to a teacher, and if the teacher and the parent don't come to some sort of agreement, we're able to put that through the process, correct? And we had a parent speak last month that said, that's all well and good, but now let's switch back to classroom library. I don't have that chance to talk to my child, but we're creating that chance. So it sounds like we are creating an opportunity so parents are able to have some input into what their children are exposed to, correct? I mean, I'm not between clubs, media center, and classroom collections. It sounds like you have found some means to make sure that if you would like to have some input, we will create that for our parents.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
on the point of book clubs too, to say that that's one of the great things about book clubs is that if a book is not something that that student should be reading or is comfortable with or the family doesn't like, just choose a different group to read a different book. And so that's,
Right.
that can
Have the chance. Yep, good.
differentiate in that
And
way.
didn't we have a similar situation probably about 3 years ago where parents came forward about a book club and concerned with the content that was sexual in nature, like for 12-year-olds and stuff? And I'm just wondering what the process was from that, like what did we learn from that? Or did nothing get handled from that? So, because I feel like we're back here again when we say, make the statement, we've never been here before. We have been here before, 3 years ago. So my question is like, how was that handled from the, and it was a book club content in the
Yeah.
classroom, and there was 6 books that were offered. I think students got to pick their top 3 that they wanted to. There was a little excerpt or something that was written about each book, what didn't even match up, I think, to some of the books that were read, and parents found out about it, and it came before the board. I'm guessing 3 years ago. I don't know who was still on the board in 2020 and stuff. So I guess my question is what was done about that back then? You know what I mean? And here we are again. And also, what was the procedures or policies that we started to put in place 3 years ago that are we still using or not using for that? So
I
that
think
was
in
my
those
question.
situations at the classroom level, with the teachers doing a book club, or again, in olden days, maybe more common today, less so, where everyone's reading the same book. The piece there is teachers really reaching out to families ahead of time to say, hey, here's the unit that we're going to be starting in 2 weeks, and here's what we're going to be doing, and here's why, and here are the materials that we'll be using. And again, providing more maybe than just a cursory description in some case or form. I think it's being clear about what and why and how on those things for our families. And those are the takeaways I know that in talking with our teachers that they have on these pieces as well.
So my concern, though, is that when we do this process and we figure this out, that the content that's in a classroom, let's say for language arts, that they're abiding by the same guidelines that a health teacher would have to abide by. If you're reading a book on abortion, that doesn't belong in the teacher's classroom in language arts, right? Or somebody having an abortion, because we have specific guidelines under our, right, Reproductive Health Advisory Board that has to come before curriculum. There's certain subject matters that we are not allowed to address or talk about. So if it's going to be in a classroom under a different guise of under language arts, are they under the same rule, the Michigan law, of making sure that it goes through the process with coming before our HAB board, which in turn, they need to come and before us on 2 different platforms, I believe, at a public setting to discuss the content and the curriculum that's in the books. And so are the teachers held to the same guides as that, as the health teachers are for bringing in that kind of material? And I think what it does is it's trickling and it's seeping out into, you know, it's in our library, it's, you know, is it in our classrooms now? Is it, you know, so I just want to know, are we holding teachers to the same standards that we are holding to the Michigan law that states about the certain content, sexual content that can come into the classroom to teach the students? That would be my question as we're setting up this process.
Well, the Reproductive Health Advisory Board and the laws around education for reproductive health are clear, they're straightforward, we abide by that. Those laws don't speak to, say, generally, books that would be in a media center, for instance. They're going to speak to the process and the materials that are used when providing education on reproductive health. So that's what's going to speak to that. And also govern what happens when those units on reproductive health are brought forward to students. And that's something that we do, not only have the Reproductive Health Advisory Board meet on the prescribed basis, but also to make sure that when those lessons are coming up, that we're notifying all of our families of that as well when that's happening.
And I guess my final thought as I'm to that point is, which I think is the right way to go from what it sounds like this draft, it's going back to parents to be able to decide where they want that line to be drawn. Again, I don't think that it is any of the district's business, and we're not the first district, we're not the first body to debate what content is appropriate in a particular place. I mean, this goes for 100 years, people have done this in different settings, right? And I don't know that we need to be ones that innovate and create something brand new. I mean, a lot of this is there. We've received a lot of education on this whole topic, certainly I have, in the last weeks, months, as we've dug into this. And there's case law that defines a lot of this already that's out of our control. I mean, a book can't be judged on a paragraph legally. It can't be, the book in its entirety has its merit, decided, not based on a shocking thing, which I don't disagree. Some of it is shocking. But, for the district to say, because of that, it's got to go, or because of that, that's okay with us, we're going to keep, I just don't think that's where we want ourselves to be. And it sounds like we're going to give parents plenty of opportunity, even at the classroom level, to do that. If they want to decide, I don't trust anything that's in there, that's going to be their choice to make, and then there will be no classroom library books for their student. If they say library is fine, and then they see what somebody is reading, and they say, I object, they can go to this teacher now, and they can work up this chain of command to make sure that's addressed. So that, it seems to me like it removes us from being the arbitrator here and deciding what everyone can read and what everyone can't, and that it allows parents multiple steps to be able to jump in and make those decisions for themselves. Yep.
This is not public comment time. All right, I think we've pretty well covered this, so thank you very much. I appreciate all of the discussion that we've had. Before we move on to the consent grouping, which is next, I would like to remind everybody, because I know we had some people that filtered in late, if you would like to speak at public comments, I have cards over here underneath the Star Rangers. Feel free to go over there and fill out a card and put it in the appropriate basket, and we will be collecting those shortly. So now I need a motion to consider the consent grouping. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve consent grouping items 6A through C.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, are there any items in the consent grouping that any board member would like to pull out for special consideration?
I'd like to pull out 6C, please.
6C. Okay.
Can we, sorry. Go ahead.
We'll get to that in 1 second. We
That's
gotta
fine.
go through that. Superintendent Beam, are there any things that you would like to draw our attention to?
Just tonight, under the consent grouping, that we are approving gifts to the district, and we thank all of those entities and individuals that have stepped forward. In this case, our Forest Hills Central Crew boosters to help our students and in educational athletics and our rowing teams in that regard. Also tonight, under the consent grouping, this is something we do every year at this time, and that is to deal with the resolutions around the School of Choice plan. Under state of Michigan, we have to be considering one or the other of these resolutions, and we are opting out of the statewide Schools of Choice plan, as we've done for the inception of the Schools of Choice law. And we are instead opting into the Kent ISD Schools of Choice Plan, which provides us with more functionality in dealing with that under a time frame and for planning purposes. And still has been the case, our schools of choice enrollment is under the 10% threshold that the board has set in policy. So those are the only items I wanted to speak to under the consent grouping tonight.
Okay, thank you. I guess we will go over to Mr. Mashad for a Finance Committee report.
Sure, we had a pretty concise agenda this month, just a few things here for us for approval tonight from the Finance Subcommittee. The first is a safety improvement over at Central High School. If anyone's familiar with the geography, there's the baseball field and the tennis courts are fairly close together, at least close enough where foul balls are certainly in range to make it to the tennis courts, which obviously represents a safety concern there. So we had 3 bids for a safety netting that could be put up along the foul line. The low bid came from Artesian Sports Netting, and so we'll be purchasing and installing a safety net that hopefully can catch some of that traffic before it makes its way over towards the tennis courts for a cost of $41,174. We have a request from the Technology Department for updated endpoint detection and response, or EDR, software for all system devices. We have over 10,000 devices in the district. This EDR software is, as it explained to me, effectively kind of super antivirus software, malware, phishing, ransomware, all of these kind of new cyber threats. So and actually our cybersecurity insurance requires that we carry protection at this level now. So our tech department performed an analysis of 5 different options and is recommending the Sentinel-1 Complete Protection Platform from People Driven Technology, which we will buy as a 3-year subscription for $168,724. The next item is new playground equipment, particularly for our summer programming, which takes place generally at Central Woodlands and Northern Trails. We've built up a surplus in the Child Care Fund, and they're looking to deploy it to pick up some new playground equipment for those spaces, particularly some structures that provide shade for better summertime activities and to be able to be outside a little longer on those hot days. So we went through the Omnia Purchasing Cooperative to meet bidding requirements for those. And we'll purchase equipment from Sinclair Recreation at a cost not to exceed $122,000. And the other are just some business items. An annual thing we do, sign off on the waiver and consent for delinquent personal property tax, that we're okay with the taxing authorities abandoning those from the tax roll after pursuing them for more than 5 years now. And then we just had a single property tax refund to Kent County in the amount of $3,280.84. And that was all we had.
Terrific. Do we have any questions for Mr. Mashad? No? Okay, we will move on to Mrs. Tryon for a Curriculum Committee report.
Yep, so we had a pretty short agenda at our curriculum meeting last week. First item was an overview of our K-8 NWEA or MAP results for the district's winter testing window. There's a compliance requirement to report these scores to Michigan under Section 98B. Forest Hill's goal is that all K-8 students test at or above the 50th percentile for that reading and that math test. Nationally, we are way above that. We do have a small handful of grade levels across the district who are just below that 50th percentile or right on the bubble. However, I do think it is worth noting that for all of us who are in education at that K-8 level, we do know that this winter window is historically dips a little bit, and then we see that come back up in the spring. And I would assume that we will continue to follow that same pattern here in Forest Hills. And then secondly, we had a report out from our instructional coaching team. And they obviously exist to provide coaching to everyone involved in instruction in the district, but they do a lot more than that as well, which I think bears reporting. So they are part of the group that helps with curriculum reviews, and they look at different curriculum resources, and they lead the team through how to review that curriculum, how to decide if that's going to be a good fit for the district, if it's a good replacement for something that we're looking to update. They help teachers with grant writing to get more resources for their classrooms. They also help to facilitate vertical planning between different grade levels. Just to make sure that our standards that we're teaching in 5th grade are being taught with fidelity, so that when kids go to 6th grade, they have a good scaffolding for the next set of standards. They also plan professional development for both teachers and administration. Most recent example being on January 16th, when they had a full district PD day with a lot of different offerings for teachers and admin. They also help to facilitate learning labs where teachers can visit other classrooms in the district at their same grade level, maybe at a grade level above or a grade level below, and to see what is happening in that classroom that they can help support and make sure their kids are prepared for. And then they also, of course, run new staff orientation in the fall. And if you remember, they launched a much more robust new staff orientation this past fall, and they will plan to continue that going into next year. They get a lot of great feedback from people they work with in the district, people who work with kids in the district. Just very thankful for the coaching that they've been able to receive. And I think anytime a district as large as ours can provide various layers of support for our staff, the better. And then that, of course, trickles down to our kids. And then, of course, we also spent a decent amount of time discussing the events of the last week in regards to books and media centers and our desire to ensure that the board policy is being followed with fidelity from the parent side. And then, again, that there is some more formalization to the media centers and the classroom libraries, which, of course, we also just talked about. So that was our meeting.
Okay, thank you. And then, Mrs. DeBoer, could you please address why you would like to pull out item 6C?
Yeah, I just wanted some clarification because I think it was the one thing we didn't talk about, which was totally fine. So what I just wanted to know is the new person replacing Kyle
Yes.
with the job duties?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, this is our
okay.
new Director of Communications.
Okay.
Yep.
And then, so the new director of communications is also, and then we added Mark on as well.
Yes, Mark
So-
Townsend is in that department as well. That reflects an assessment that we had done some years ago now. It even predates the pandemic, I want to say. Was it 2019? Thank you, Mrs. Vaughn. That really looked at our communications capabilities at the time and said that for the size district we have and all the things that are going on, that we just didn't have enough people to help us communicate out all the things that are happening and what we want to do on that. So Elizabeth and Mark really formed that department on that we really haven't had before. And we're also looking to potentially supplement that with some interns who are interested in communications and marketing like going forward. Yep.
Okay, and then I
Need a
think.
motion?
Yes, I think if you wanted to have that pulled out separately for a motion. No? Okay. Okay, terrific. All right, well then we need to have a roll call vote on the consent grouping.
Mr. Rashad?
Yes.
Ms. Steinmeier?
Yes.
Ms. DeBoer?
Yes.
Ms. Funk?
Yes.
Ms. Cavell?
Yes.
Dr. Fossen?
Yes.
Mrs. Tryon? Yes.
Terrific. All right, well, this is the last reminder for filling out a public comment card. And we will move into informational items.
I have no informational items tonight.
Okay. Then Mrs. Brink, if you would be so kind as to bring up the comment cards, we will let Mr. Beam head into his superintendent's report.
All right. Well, thank you to Nathan and Pine Ridge for us being here tonight. Thank you to all of your teachers and our student presenters. It was wonderful to hear the great things that are happening in our classrooms, and it's wonderful to be back here at Pine Ridge. It's also great to be here since you've been principal. We have not been to Pine Ridge, so it's great, Nathan, having you at the helm. Thank you for your daily work every day and working hard for the Pine Ridge community. We really appreciate it. Thank you to our student artists as well. This is the first time I've gotten such a portrait, and what a special thing in that regard. My goodness, I will cherish that, so thank you. And thank you to our teachers and staff, not only here at Pine Ridge, but all throughout the district, who continue to work extremely hard to help meet the needs of all of our students. We're continuing to find ourselves in a place where what our students and families need seems to be a wider breadth than ever, and our teachers just continue to work so incredibly hard to do and meet those needs, and also to all of our staff members that help in ways that are seen and unseen, behind the scenes and out front in so many different ways. I'm so grateful for your support. I want to say congratulations to Elizabeth Brink, coming back to the position of Director of Communications. Elizabeth, it's great to have you with your knowledge of our community, that hat you also wear of mom and parent makes a big difference as well. I know the Forest Hills Public Schools Foundation is grateful for your leadership there, and it's great to have you here. And also to Mark. Mark and Elizabeth will form a great team in our communications department, telling wonderful stories of things that are going on in our hundreds of classrooms throughout the district. So, Mark, thanks for your work as well. And I'd just like to also say this month, the month of February, many things going on, but it's also Black History Month. We look at Black history as part of American history and part of world history. We teach that all months throughout the school year, but it's important to call that out. And we're so grateful for all of our teachers and students that are helping bring forth stories that haven't always been told in the past to help fill out that history and provide a well-rounded education to all of us. So thanks to all of our students and staff members that help celebrate Black History Month as well. And that concludes my report for tonight.
All right, terrific. Turn that back on. All right, thank you very much. We are up to board communications now. Are there any board communications? Nobody. Okay, well, I have a couple. A couple of weeks ago, Mrs. Tryon and I had the opportunity to go to a training at MASB on collective bargaining. That season is coming up upon us, and as newer board members, we wanted to get a better understanding at sort of a high level of what that process is going to be like. And I know we have some more training coming up for the whole team on that I'm looking forward to. The other one is that I had an opportunity last month to sit in on the Student Advisory Council meeting, which was fantastic. These kids are amazing. I was super impressed with how thoughtful they were, how insightful. They asked great questions. Superintendent Beam spent a lot of time talking with them about the strategic planning process that we're going through. And wow, I was very impressed. And they actually talked for a very long time, such that I had to leave the meeting early because they just kept going on and on and on. So I had to leave before they were done, but they were quite incredible. And I know that the February meeting got canceled because of snow on Thursday, along with everything else. So that was kind of a bummer, but I did enjoy going to that. The last thing that I want to mention in board communications, and it's just sort of for all of us, if you will give me a minute, is to sort of, we've talked about this a lot already tonight in terms of roles and responsibilities. As the Board of Education, we set the vision and the mission. We make sure that there are policies in place to fulfill that vision and mission, to guide that mission. We make sure that the budget is there to support that mission. We're sort of 30,000-foot thinkers, so that's the way we look at things. We don't implement any of the operational stuff, day-to-day things of the district. That stuff is handled by the superintendent's office. And, well, actually, I should say it's headed by the superintendent's office. It's not handled by the superintendent, it's headed by him, because the superintendent is like a CEO. He is a relationship builder. He is out there to implement the vision of the district, to build buy-in, to talk with the staff, to talk with the kids, to talk with the parents, and really make sure that everybody is on board, and we're all sort of rowing in the same direction. As sort of the CEO, he surrounds himself with very capable administrators and staff that handle a lot of the day-to-day operations. You know, sort of as you wouldn't expect the CEO of Spartan Nash to know exactly what time they should pull the rotisserie chickens off of the shelf because they might be, they're a little old. I don't think any of us would want Superintendent Beam to be in charge of saying when we need to throw out the food here in the Pine Ridge cafeteria. That's just not what he does. He hires people with their particular areas of expertise, whether it's in food service or libraries or bus drivers. He hires them and relies on them to carry out day-to-day functions. I think for too long, we have been bringing too many day-to-day operational things to the superintendent and to the board. This does two different things. The first is I want to say it distracts us from our jobs in the sense that our jobs are not operational. Our jobs are focused on the vision. But the more important aspect of that is that if we are looking at these operational things, it's devaluing the people who actually do those jobs. If people have a question about something that's going on in the district, of something that's going on in their kid's classroom, they should be talking to their teacher. And we've said this already here tonight. First line is go to the teacher. Teachers are happy to talk to you. I've talked to several of them. They don't consider it a burden to have to explain what's going on in their curriculum. They don't think that it's unnecessary to want, they're like most people. They like to talk about their jobs. They're teachers for a reason. They enjoy being there. They want to express what's going on. And if people have a question, talk to your teacher. That's just sort of the very first line. And one of the things, you know, as much as they don't think that this is a burden, one thing that they don't like is when people go over their heads to somebody else to talk about an issue they have in their classroom before it's even brought to their attention. You know, I feel like we have moved sort of into I want to speak to the manager society. You know, everybody feels entitled to go directly to the top and have the top answer for everything. But I think we've all made it very clear tonight that everybody has specific roles and responsibilities. You know, the top isn't always responsible for deciding what books are in a library. The top is not responsible for Spirit Day choices in a school. And the top is definitely not responsible for knowing when to throw away the chicken nuggets. So I guess what I'm asking is for all of us to remember these roles and responsibilities and to honor the work and dedication of every member of the FHPS community by directing comments and questions to the appropriate level. So principals, if you get a question, the first thing that you should ask is, have you talked to the teacher? You know, if, Dan, I know that you care very much about everything that goes on in this district, and you love to talk to people and are always very open and willing to talk to anybody that has a question or a concern. But I think in order for you to be able to do your job effectively, sometimes you have to say, I hear you, but let me put you in touch with, and direct them to the right person, because you're not always the right person. And same with us as board members. We're not always the right person to talk to. We're here to establish a direction and a vision, and we're also here because we want to be. We're here because we love it. It's hard for us to not put ourselves out there and try to answer every single question that people have. But in order for us to do our job right, we have to also maintain some distance from operational issues. So we need to keep our eyes on the horizon. You need to keep your eye on the horizon. And so I'm hoping that with all that we've been talking about over the last days and weeks and months, that we can sort of move forward with a commitment to ensuring that issues are handled closest to the source. I think that the FHPS staff is full of incredibly capable people, incredibly dedicated people, And I think we owe it to them to be treated as the professionals they are by letting them do their jobs. So, with that,
Dr. Paulson?
Yes.
I would just chime in with one final bit of foundation news, because there's a lot going on. For those that are interested, it's a busy time for the foundation. Still looking for volunteers who would like to join the foundation board of directors. A couple of positions that they're looking to fill. A lot more information on their website, but particularly in the northern and the eastern attendance areas to keep it a rounded group. If you have interest in that, please check it out. The art and essay contest is happening. That's a highlight of every winter, K through 12. The topic is One Wish for Our Future, and kids will be writing, kids will be drawing, and doing a lot of cool things, and we'll get to see some of that in the future when those things are assessed. The spring grant cycle application cycle has closed, and those things are being evaluated now, and those awards will start to come out in March to the grant winners. The foundation as a whole is also looking for a new executive director right now, so everyone is working overtime on a lot of different pieces. And finally, just the dates to mark your calendars for: May 4th is the State of the District Luncheon hosted by the foundation, and then in June we'll have the Memorial Golf Tournament as usual as well. So keep those on your radar as well. And that's it for the foundation. And if I could, I guess the only other thing that I wanted to say, different topic entirely, not really to give it a platform, but just so everyone is on the same page. No one wishes we could have conversations like this amongst ourselves more than me, more than all of us, but we can't. This is indeed the place where these discussions have to happen, the only place where these discussions can happen. Nothing has gripped this district more in the last month than this topic, and the laws and the requirements around school boards and all of these government bodies require that those discussions actually only happen in these types of venues. So I appreciate that we went long, and I know it's been a long meeting. I think it was good that we were able to have this discussion together, and just so we're all clear, this is where it actually legally has to happen. Thank you.
okay, terrific, thank you. All right, we are up to public comments. Thank you so much for filling out the cards. I'm hoping that this will make things a little bit more orderly, that we'll be able to be a little bit more directly responsive. So thank you. This is going to be a great sort of test run to see how this goes. So I will still do things in the same order we used to. That's why we had the little baskets out though. So students will be first, then staff, then community members. So now I will give my standard little spiel here. At this time, we welcome members of the community to address the board. When you are called, please come up to the microphone and state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please direct all comments to the board. Per established procedures, we will not respond to questions or interact with the speaker during public comment. All right, first one, we have Morgan, and I apologize. I am going to probably kill some names. I will do my best. And the other thing that I also wanted to mention is if at some point in the previous 2 hours, your question or comment has been addressed and you don't want to come up and talk anymore, that's totally okay. You can just say pass or just duck your head and we'll move on. So that is always an option for you. So first up, we have Morgan Titchen.
Yeah, Morgan stepped out of the restrooms and was back.
Okay. We'll go to the next one then. Becky Olson.
Do I need to announce where I live or anything like that?
It's great if you could do your name and your address for the record.
Becky Olson, 3795 Goodwood Drive Southeast, and I'm a Pine Ridge mother. Okay. While books are the granular topic of many comments tonight, again, I would like to take a step back and reframe the perspective. What's most upsetting is the continued bullying, discrimination, and harassment of marginalized youth. Books are only one of the ways this is happening, but as we hear every month, there's a revolving door of manufactured attacks. It's unoriginal and it's tired. There's a perception that through threats, recordings, or whatever else, the people who single-handedly tried to stain this district's reputation and recall all of you, and who complain at every single turn, are continually and tangibly affecting young people's lives, including the facts that books are even a conversation at this point. I am upset that this bullying has gone on for far too long, no matter what form of the day it takes. I'm concerned about the rights of parents whose children actually attend these schools. We are substitute teachers, foundation donors, athletic and academic boosters, room parents, and vocal supporters who are doing everything within our ability to lift this district up and ensure that all students feel represented. None of the perceived issues are from these people because we talk to the teachers. There are people in here bringing books from the KDL to read aloud, from Moms for Liberty and other recruited political groups. I need to point out that this disruption is far larger than obscene books. 1 year ago, the chief recaller in the room called for a ban on a book that so much as mention LGBTQ characters. They want them nowhere on the premises. As a result, one of the most innocent books under this very roof, called My Footprints, was not read to students. So where do we start to draw the line on these policies? The goalposts will continue to stretch. This month, one of the families whose kids could have benefited from reading My Footprints left the district. This provided yet another teachable moment in our home, courtesy of this attack group, about how everyone simply wants to feel welcome where they live, and sadly, there are people who continue to model the antithesis of this behavior. So next time the attackers want to bring up enrollment numbers, be sure to add those who were driven away by their own bullying. We're here in Pine Ridge, and our motto is pride, responsibility, and respect. I am so grateful for this North Star in my home that brings so many teachable moments and makes them so easy. When you hear from attackers today or any other, that is not a representation of FHPS, and especially not of Pine Ridge. To the educators and students who have felt threatened, silenced, and harassed by the bullies, I'm sorry for what you continue to experience by those who don't attend this district. Belief-based exclusion needs to stop. The disruption needs to stop. Everyone needs to start respecting and proudly taking responsibility over the need to make this a welcome place for their children and adopt the policies available to them in their own home. That's it.
I have a feeling Morgan came back. Okay, Morgan, you're up.
Hello, my name is Morgan Tishon, and I'm a sophomore student at Forest Hills Central High School. Something has come to my attention that I'm very concerned about. There's a new class that just got proposed and signed off by Dan Benham, Steve Passanal, my principal, and Scott Haid, which is the superintendent, if I'm correct. This is a class for 11th and 12th graders, and I'm in 10th right now, but this could be an option for me next year. This class is called The Blank Page. And something that really concerned me about it is that there's an artist in there called Marina Abramovic, who is an open Satanist, which she makes realistic cakes with blood, semen, and breast milk that she then feeds to elitists. And she says she does this for cultist, ritual, and sex and magic Satanists, which really concerns me that we're going to be learning about this. Another thing she talks about, or she has presented in her art, is suicide, which my mother committed suicide one day, and I really don't want to be learning about stuff like that in the classroom, because I know a lot of people struggle deeply with that, and she almost glorifies it in a way, which I think art can be very powerful, but this is not something I think should be introduced to classrooms. There's a lot of stuff she does where she makes like these realistic cakes that I was talking about that look like people, and there's cuts all over them. And it's just, her art is very disturbing. She draws art with pig blood. And yet I get like art is very objective, and it is something that many people can interpret differently, but this is just way too far for school. And this is not something that me, and I think many of my friends agree with, because I was talking about this with them today, want to learn about. This is deeply disturbing, and I really don't think this should be in our classrooms. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Okay, next up we have Jarrett Jakubowski.
Name good.
Thank you.
Yeah, from Grand Rapids Township. Because one picture is worth 1,000 words, tonight I had intended to distribute printouts of graphic pictures from 5 age-inappropriate books that had been in our kids' libraries. Again, that's past tense, had been. Early today, I was informed that all had been removed. I sincerely thank the administration for doing that. However, God knows what our kids can still access from their woke teachers' personal shelves. There is, or should be, a distinct difference between appropriate sex education for children and the sexualization of our children. Tragically, we have woke teachers everywhere, not just the lunatic libs of TikTok, who intentionally blur the holy hell out of that distinction without a difference. That said, books are not the problem. Such books are a symptom of the insidious pandemic infecting our politics, media, even our churches, and yes, our schools. Speaking of books, Ernest Hemingway, an American author you may have heard of, long ago wrote a line that resonates now with our culture, politics, and schools. Some disasters, he wrote, happen gradually and then suddenly. The disaster of our schools, our country, plummeting from normal to suddenly crazy, has been a calculated strategy begun 100 years ago by Marxist atheist educators from the Frankfurt School, transplanted to Marxist atheist John Dewey's Columbia University, and then, true to the blueprint of Dewey, founding father of America's modern public school system, oh so gradually injected incrementally over the decades into college curricula, especially those grinding out degrees for future journalists and teachers. Then suddenly, in part, thanks to COVID and remote learning, parents and grandparents learned what is actually happening below the radar in our schools. And so, here we are in a country with the number of nutty pronouns and genders increasing daily, boys and girls sports and locker rooms, mid-teen girls chopping off their breasts, boys getting castrated, and more fashionable rejections from healthy, normal to bat crap crazy. And so here we are, objecting to books that are directly linked to all that suddenly crazy wokeism that sexualize and indoctrinate our children. A telling symptom of that long-term Marxist strategy to destroy what has always been the impediment to their nightmarish dream. Our American dream, made real by a devotion to family, faith, and freedom, and a reverence for our God-given, natural, unalienable rights. Please, please join us on the right side of history and the future of our country's children.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Robin Vanderjack.
Robin Vanderjack, 3770 Goodwood, Southeast. I don't have much comment tonight, but back in November, book was brought up, Push. I ended up getting at the library just recently because somebody said you should just read it from cover to cover rather than reading excerpts from it. So I am going to do that, and then maybe next month I'll have more comment. But I just felt that someone had pointed out that Forest Hills has a family handbook regarding sexual harassment and speaks about visual sexual harassment, subjecting another person to sexually suggestive, pornographic, obscene images or text. And I just felt this particular book speaks about adult male and an adult female committing various sexual acts with a minor child as young as 5, 6, including a grandfather who subjects himself to his infant granddaughter. I won't go into all the sights and smells and sounds that are described in this book, but I wanted to know how to find out if you actually have it still in the library at Forest Hills. I looked it up on Destiny and Follett because I was told that that's the best source to find out what are on our shelves. And this afternoon, it said that I only looked up Forest Hills Northern, and it said that it was on the shelf in the library. So I left my email address so that somebody from the school who is an authority on this sort of thing could contact me. I think a lot of parents really don't know who to go to. That's why we come to the school board. Maybe there isn't a policy in place yet, but it sounds like maybe you are working towards that. And the gentleman before who had said that he had pictures of books that had been on the shelves that were now taken off, I appreciate the fact that that happened. So I'll just wait to hear from somebody whether or not the book's on the shelf, and yeah, we'll go forward. But appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mike Loitz.
Hello, this is Mike Loix. I live at 639 Altadale. One of the big questions I have is, are there forms of visual sexual harassment here at FHPS? So Robin actually mentioned it already, so I'm just reiterating that. I have a copy of the Student Family Handbook for the middle school. I also referenced the high school. And I'd like to read a couple sections here. This was created or updated in August 2022. There's 3 versions of harassment, sexual harassment: verbal, visual, and physical. So, under harassment of students is prohibited and will not be tolerated. This includes inappropriate conduct by other students as well as any other person in the school environment, including employees, board members, parent guardians, guests, contractors, vendors, or volunteers. It is the policy of the district to provide a safe and nurturing educational environment for all of its students. This policy applies to all activities on school property and to all sponsored activities, whether on or off school property. Jumping to the sex-based harassment may include, but is not limited to, sexual harassment that is unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature. Again, there's 3 versions written here: verbal, visual, and physical. I'll describe again the visual that Robin mentioned. Subjecting another person to sexually suggestive, pornographic, or obscene images, text, or cartoons, including by electronic mail, text message, letter, or any other medium. Sex-based harassment does not require a specific target, an intent to harm, or repeated incidents. So, as we've been discussing, there's been years here, a bunch of examples of these issues of the sexual material. And then hearing today, again, the progress and some of the events that have happened with working on a draft media plan. Again, thank you for taking actions to address this, but obviously you're not done. So if you haven't had a chance to look at this particular document, I think it's pretty important the board actually is responsible for this document. So like we talked today about people reading the whole book, I would encourage you to read your own guidelines that you have put out there. And I think this is bringing up a really important point about how to manage this. And I think this gives you some really good guidelines that you yourselves have agreed to.
Thank you. All right. Heather Tishon.
Can I give the secretary something?
Yeah, go ahead. Can hand it right over there to Val.
Oh, sorry. There's only three, so like share and then one for each. These are graphic pictures, so if you don't want to look at them, you can pass them on. My name is Heather Tishan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm going to continue speaking a little bit about what Morgan so eloquently spoke about just a minute ago. And that's about curriculum, and so I think this is the right forum to talk about that with you guys, because the curriculum is signed off on by the principal and the superintendent and the assistant superintendent. So the class that I'm talking about is called The Blank Page, and it's a kind of an interdisciplinary class. It's an English and an art class. It's a 2-hour class for 11th and 12th graders, and it combines literature and art, which I think sounds great. But one of the artists, like Morgan mentioned, is an artist named Marina Abramovic, and she is a self-proclaimed witch who makes art with pig's blood, and she hosts gatherings with celebrities and elites where they will have full-size naked body cakes, and they will cut into them. So this is part of her art rituals that she does. She has a lot of satanic art, which you'll see in those photos. And in the literature portion of this class, one of the texts that's listed as an option for the students to read is her memoir called Walk Through Walls. I just learned about this curriculum, so I haven't had a chance to read the book. I'm not sure I really want to, but I did read some of the reviews online about it, and there are quite a few people who are very disturbed by the content in her memoir. But again, I haven't read it myself. But as a parent, I don't want my children in a class where they will be doing a deep dive analysis and focus on an artist who participates and celebrates the occult. There are many thousands of artists out there who are edgy but do not promote Satan worship. And so it looks like there's 2 teachers, Dr. Keller and Ms. Steins, who developed this curriculum, and then it was approved. And I'm wondering if the people who approved it knew that this content was included in the class. And if so, I'm curious about why you think the content is appropriate for our teens to study. And if you didn't know it was in there, I'm wondering why not. I'm wondering what the checks and balances are for these teachers who are bringing this content to the school. And then also, just as a final statement, there's a larger agenda that I'm aware of in our world to promote things like Satanism, breaking down the family, breaking down values and basic morals. And we need to be accepting. I'm a therapist. We need to be accepting and inclusive of all kinds of people, but we also have to know where to draw the line and not to adopt a stance of anything goes, in my opinion, especially when it comes to our children. So thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Scott Reese.
Scott Rissy, 7238 Cascade Road. I wanted to speak about transportation, a little different direction here. So first off, I wanted to thank the staff and board for their efforts to reinstate regular busing. It's been great to not have to drive my kids to and from school every day. So that's been good this year. But I go to a lot of middle school sporting events, basketball, swimming, for instance, and we appear to still be the only district without transportation to those events. And so I'm hopeful that you're working towards filling that need in the near future. With regard to safety, this is the main reason I came in, I guess, is I noticed that every day when I watch kids get on the bus, well, we live on Cascade Road, there's no shoulder where we are. The bus stops, the flashing red lights turn on, the sign goes out, and generally 2 to 3 cars blow past the bus. The bus driver has her little wimpy horn that she honks, but nobody hears it. Other school districts, some of them have air horns, so they actually get some attention. When I follow that bus down Cascade Road, I noticed that a majority of the stops now, the bus just turns on the four-way flashers, the hazard lights. They don't put the stop sign out. They don't turn on the red lights. And I think what we are developing is a situation where we're not consistent in the way we handle bus stops. And a lot of younger drivers seem to be somewhat confused, maybe even older ones. They just blow past the bus. And now I'm seeing, in fact, this just happened a few weeks ago, we had a situation where the bus driver told my son to run because somebody slammed on their brakes when they realized it was a stop sign, and the car behind them didn't and swerved and almost ran into the front of the bus. So it seems to be a problem. In fact, even getting worse. In the last, I would say, 3 months this school year, I have seen the bus stop at the end of our driveway at least 5 times, typically with substitute bus drivers, where they just used the hazard lights on four-ways. They did not turn on the red flashing lights or put the stop sign out. So the consistency problem now is not only just with what the drivers see, but our own bus drivers seem to be inconsistent in the way they're handling the bus stops. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
Thank you. All right, next is Jennifer Feuerstein.
Jennifer Firestein, 6454 Tanglewood Drive, Cascade Township, and I have children in Forest Hills Eastern. Mr. Beam, you had mentioned earlier in the meeting that you do not recall a time when a parent came to you about books, and I just want to help recollect with that, because back in 2020, in January of 2020, before the pandemic, I approached you about a book that my daughter was assigned in a book club. You called a private board meeting together with me, 6 parents, and County Commissioner Monica Sparks, along with Judy Walton, who was the principal of the middle school at the time. My daughter was assigned the 57 bus, and in the book club description that the teachers sent to us, they said that the teachers have chosen 6 exceptional nonfiction books that are sure to pique the interest of our middle school readers. My daughter is the one who tipped me off to what was in the content of that book. I read through the book. There were 3 pages of sexually explicit definitions. My daughter was introduced to homosexual oral sex, suicide, random sex, drug use, racial slurs, graphic language, vulgar slang, sexual violence, shootings, abortion, and rectal and vaginal searches. She was 12 years old at the time. You mentioned that books should be a window into a world students do not yet know. No 12-year-old should be exposed to this kind of content at that age. At that time, after that meeting, we were informed that there would be a review process that would be implemented, and we as parents would be allowed to be a part of that. I have heard nothing in the past 3 years, and when I hear time and again that this is a new issue that's just come up in the last month, that is not true. This was addressed back in 2020 before the pandemic started. I want to understand why Forest Hills won't take a stronger stance to protect young minds from sexually explicit, violent, and graphic content. And in the parent letter that was just sent out last week, where it says that if a parent feels that there is a book in our collection that should not be in the collection or should be moved elsewhere, there is a process and form available to assist. Why does this have to happen after our children are exposed to this kind of content? I do not have the confidence that our teachers are providing exceptional content as what they once said in that note in the email that went out to us. So I want to understand how we as parents have trust and confidence in the decisions that our teachers are making when they're not going through the formal curriculum review process because book clubs don't. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Stephanie Boone.
Superintendent Beam, my name is Stephanie Boone, 2205 Knoll Point Drive. Superintendent Beam, I do want to thank you for your presentation tonight on the media materials, and also your letter to the FHPS community dated February 16, 2023. It pains me that it has taken 2 years of reading porn to get us to this point, but at least we're here. It gives me hope that we're making progress toward transparency and accountability, which is something I think every one of us in this room really would appreciate, no matter which walk of life we're from. So I greatly look forward to the upcoming changes that will allow parents to set access preferences to books which will be customized for our own children, because we all do want what's best for our own children. I do agree with that. As a former K-12 educator, I absolutely understand that books and literacy are 1000% not a one-size-fits-all approach. I understand that. And schools are tasked with a monumental job in trying to have something to offer everyone. And Dan, I appreciate that you said that you are not banning books, because we're not banning books. What we're trying to do, and clearly what you are trying to do in your own way, is to protect young minds from sexually explicit content. And I know it's very hard, and you are in a very hard position here. Scott is as well, and the board members who believe, like so many of us do, that our children do need to be protected from dangerous, sexually explicit content. So I do appreciate your efforts in doing that. I don't know if you are familiar with Jamie McIlvaney from Let Them Play. She just told me this weekend that the Monroe County prosecutor has been tasked with giving the Milan Area Schools Board of Education and administrators a subtle little reminder that he warned them that if you have books containing sexually explicit content in the schools and they are not a part of the curriculum, they best be under lock and key for anyone that is under the age of 18 in your schools. Otherwise, whoever it is that is intentionally feeding these books to minors is walking a very thin line between education versus facing child pornography charges. So you are walking a thin line. Please be aware of that. Nobody in Kent County wants to deal with that, including any of you, I'm sure. Lastly, Scott Haid told me in a meeting a couple weeks ago that he doesn't believe me that I have an army of people that would be willing to help to weed these books out of our schools and classrooms. And I would just like to ask if there are any parent volunteers in the room tonight who would be willing to help with that. Would you please stand up to show your support?
Thank you. All right, next up, we have Nick Prill.
My name is Nick Brill, and I live at 1838 Forest Lake Drive. Madam President, I appreciate the comparison that you tried to make to a business and Dan being a CEO. The unfortunate part there is that you're a local governing body. You are duly elected representatives to represent the taxpayers. We have a First Amendment right to redress our grievances to you, and if you don't want to hear them, maybe you shouldn't have signed up for the job. That said, I am here to redress two grievances in regards to you breaking Michigan compiled law. The Michigan Open Meetings Act dictates that any decisions made by a board, school board, policies, must be deliberated and voted on in open forum. It is my understanding that you took it upon yourself to implement this new card policy for us to speak. Not only does that violate the Open Meetings Act, as it's not listed in Board Policy 2504, which sets out the requirements for us to speak publicly, it also violates your own bylaws that state that the board should deliberate and make decisions, all decisions, openly. Further, MCL 380.10, which you've heard many of us quote over the last couple of years, talks about it being the fundamental right of parents to control the education of their children. I won't read you the whole thing. And I shouldn't have to, because actually the Michigan legislature amended this in December. MCL 380.10a requires, beginning January 1st, 2023, that the board of a school district or intermediate school district should publish MCL 380.10 in the room or rooms in which the board or board of directors conducts its meetings, and the office of the school district's administrators, principals' offices. So I don't see that published anywhere around here. Okay. Well, thank you for publishing it there. I think it would be more convenient to have it published by the door. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Vincent Manhar.
So this presentation is rated PG-13 for language. On February 8th, 2023, an obscure organization, the NCAC, created a disinformation article to defame our superintendent for policy violations surrounding book removal. I aim to refute this article. First, their argument revolves around a recording they claim is of Dan Beam. The article states, quote, "The recording was posted on Facebook last fall by Stephanie Boone," end quote. But the provided link is a screenshot of a Facebook post with no direct access to the actual recording. There is no proof that the recording is linked to the Facebook post. Number two, a tech-savvy person can easily create or manipulate a sound file, making any sort of slanderous claim. There is no proof enclosed that the recorded speaker is even Dan Beam. Third, the article manipulates visceral emotion by removing context, saying, quote, "Find where they are, pull them out, get rid of them." The full quote is, quote, "There's no reason for us to have anything in here where it would be at best a rated R movie, which you need parents. It's restricted to kids under age 18. This stuff is in there. I have no desire for that in any of our schools. I find it embarrassing that those things are there, and I said, get rid of them. I don't need you or some other parent to have the burden come in, go through some bureaucratic process. We have the authority as administrators to pull them. So I said, go find where they are, pull them, I'll get rid of them." Fourth, Mr. Beam is accused of violating Board Policy 5407AG, which the NCAC claims requires a reconsideration committee. This is false. Directly quoted, quote, "The book review process should be followed if, after discussing the questioned material informally with the appropriate building school officials, no resolution is made. Based on the instructional materials sister policy, these officials can be inferred as first, a teacher or librarian, second, the principal, and the reconsideration committee is a third level request. There are administrators with the authority to move books." This article is rife with misinformation that maliciously disinforms the public. A public library is a repository for all knowledge. A school library is a curated subset with purpose. For FHPS per policy 5407AG, this purpose is, quote, "Provide faculty and students with age-appropriate materials that enrich and support the curriculum and meet the needs of students and faculty served," end quote. Removing inappropriate books from a school library is not banning. School libraries curate so children are not prematurely exposed to graphic adult situations. At the end of the recording, the speaker says, quote, "If people are looking for them, they can go to Amazon or they can find them some other place. That's not our purpose," end quote. A parent who wants to inflict inappropriate books on their children loses nothing from book curation. Without curation, my ability to protect my children's innocence is actively robbed. The NCAC is a coalition formed by activists that helps for planning, activities, speakers, and print materials. By attacking our superintendent, this partisan group supports that 12 to 14-year-olds be given unlimited access to books about graphic drug use and prostitution, such as Heroin, Minnie McGinnis, books about animal abuse, suicide, and child rape, Impulse by Ellen Hopkins.
Time's up, thank you.
Ah, very good. You get the idea.
Next up is Doug Lee.
I had an intention of, my name is Doug Lee, I live in Ada, Michigan. I had an intention of reading 380.10A, but I'll neglect that. I do suggest that you do read your own bylaws because one of your primary goals is the safety of the kids, students. That's in your own bylaws, not a long-term visionary. I handed out a resume and related materials of a hired counselor at Forest Hill Central last year using ESSER funds. The resume requires extensive vetting of some of the political cult red flags listed: research interest, teacher's interest, professional services as queer and feminist theory peer mentor. Next, visit the GVSU graduate research paper of the counselor supporting transgender and non-binary middle school students through inclusive policies and practices. This resume should bring many questions and concerns to parents. How did Human Resource vet this person? Who recommended this person for employment? How do you think parents would feel if they read the same resume I presented you? From my perspective, this resume does not reflect an unbiased person that can give career or academic guidance to students. On November 2022, at school board meeting, Superintendent Beam adamantly denied that school districts hire any sexual dysphoria counselors. I want you to see the screenshot I sent to you. Gender or sexual dysphoria is a term that describes a sense of unease that a person may have caused of a mismatch between their biological sex and gender identity. Public schools is not the business of developing the pupils. Public schools are in the business of developing the pupils' intellectual capabilities via academic excellence and not mental health counseling. There are professional mental health organizations to work with parents on these matters. Violation of MCL 380 is breaking the law. There are consequences for those who break the law. Your fate will be eventually in the hands of the next prosecuting attorney or the next attorney general. You will be judged tomorrow on your actions today. When civil and criminal judgment comes, will True Law, National School Board Association, and teachers' unions stand behind you, or are they just simply using you as puppets?
Thank you. Stacy Aukman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stacy Aukman. I live in the Forest Hills Northern District. I have 2 kids who are in school, and I, like many other people, listen to the recording and
cover up my actions, cover up my actions, cover up my actions. And that's what I saw during this entire presentation. I'm disappointed in members of this board for not standing up to the superintendent and falling for his excuses. Mary sounded like she was here as his personal PR representative. That was awkward, listening to that.
you have believed and taken at face value what Dan has told you. So he's told you, it's the MMCs, which, by the way, they make the same wage as the people who supervise recess. They make next to nothing, but we're gonna train them better, because that's what's gonna stop our superintendent from deciding to listen to the chalkboard gang and remove books. So you might talk about these MMCs in ways that, I don't know, what did you call them, media clerks? Well, the media clerks, they have things to say too. So like everything leaves a trail, there's a trail. So on June 30, 2022, I'm sure that rings true to you, Dan. That was the day that you sent someone to all the high schools. They removed Beyond Magenta 3 copies, The Handmaid's Tale, the graphic novel, 2 copies, Looking for Alaska, 4 copies, Me and Earl and the Dying Girl, 1 copy. My Friend Drummer, a graphic novel, 2 copies. Sounds creepy. 19 Minutes, 2 copies removed. Yeah, so who is it that has access to, what is it called here? It's not any of the Peon media clerks. I don't know, it comes from Scott Haydes' office. There's 2 people that have access, so if you guys wanna look at that query and do your jobs and hold Dan accountable, then you can go through Scott and he can tell you who removed the copies and then deleted the catalog entry, because that's what happened. I think the earliest one was published in 2005, not 1960.
Thank you. Next up is Michelle Schellenberg.
Michelle Schellenberg. I live in Cascade and have students in Central. I do have a request for consideration at the end of my comments that could have been emailed, but I wanted to thank you publicly. Thank you for your efforts to put in place policies, procedures, and transparency regarding books. I appreciate that you have taken the time to consider the many viewpoints and needs of all children in our community and to consider what is best for a public education. Thank you for working with parents and families to find a fair, transparent, and equitable process. I was at the curriculum committee meeting last week and heard some of the ideas working towards the refinement of the book process, transparency, and the ability to have knowledge about what our children are reading, what is being read to them, and what is available to them is effective in building trust and allowing families to partner with teachers and the district. I would like to ask you to consider including in the revised policies a process to make available a list of the titles that are in the classroom libraries. There is no catalog for classroom books. Most teachers don't keep a list. Some even have said they don't know what is on their shelves. That was said to me. I know that my students' classroom libraries have included titles with sexually explicit content that we would rather opt out from. Because we didn't know the full content, the teacher couldn't tell me the content, and absent of a vehicle to monitor book choice, we had to exclude our student entirely from all books and lost any benefit of having a classroom library. Yes, parents can ask the contents of the classroom shelves and to the teacher, and should probably, but I have found that in the current politically charged nature of the discussion, it makes it unnecessarily adversarial. Parents don't want to ask for fear of starting off a bad relationship with teachers. Teachers are leery about why parents are asking. Everyone is guarded and distrustful. A policy that systematically provides a list of titles on the classroom shelves allows parents to partner with teachers. It can alleviate tension, build trust, and strengthen the school and home partnership and ensure that no one is excluded. Please consider adding this piece of transparency to your procedures. And thanks for working out for our community.
Thank you. Next up is Walter Bujak.
Good evening, Walter Bujak, 6639 Thornapple River Drive in Alto, Michigan. And I am also Licking County District 21 Commissioner. I come before you as an advocate of the board. I'm asking all of you to take note and consider taking action to develop a policy as to how to deal with Prop 3 issues, as they will no doubt eventually arise within your district. By establishing a policy, you'll be proactive rather than reactive. You will become leaders rather than followers, and you will establish a model for other schools to follow. Why establish a policy dealing with Prop 3? The answer is simple. It's the right thing to do. By carefully crafting a policy, you will mitigate your liability and protect yourselves from costly lawsuits. The basis for your policy, other than protecting the district from legal ramifications of your decisions and actions, should be parental rights. Why parental rights? Because Prop 3, as a Michigan State constitutional amendment, is poorly written, but written in such a way as to exclude parental notification as a requirement. As I mentioned at the last meeting, the Michigan State Constitution is preceded by the Constitution of the United States, which you have all sworn to uphold. The Supreme Court ruling confirmed in Washington versus Gluckberg 521 U.S. 702 from 1997 that the 14th Amendment Due Process Clause protects the rights of parents to direct the care, upbringing, and education of their children. This is exactly why you should be writing a procedure that includes informing parents of students' requests to facilitate abortion rights and/or gender modification and gender transformation. Under the current Prop 3 amendment, you, as school administrators, are required by the Michigan State Constitution to facilitate the request of any individual coming to you with these requests for so-called health benefits now protected by the Michigan State Constitution. Please make parental rights your highest priority, and please consult with your attorneys and craft a policy that includes parental rights notifications. It's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Greg King.
My name's Greg King. I'm from Cascade Township. I just wanted to make a comment about the public comment. I think you guys still need to ask after everybody makes their comments whether there's anybody else that wants to speak. I don't think you should just end it before. You know, you still have other things going on when you collect. You collect it before the superintendent's report and board communications. People still need to cut. They could have other ideas come up when people are speaking. So you should still ask if anybody else wants to speak. We only get 3 minutes every month to speak, so I think it'd just be a good thing. Keep more open. Thank you.
Scott Teason? Teagan.
Hello, I'm Scott Tidgen from Grand Rapids City, and I'm here as a concerned family member and friend. So I think there's a distinction that needs to be drawn tonight, considering there's the majority of the topic is on books and their sexual content. Physical characteristics versus behavioral characteristics. Hair color, eye color, height, bone structure, skin color, etc. We're all born with these. They're essentially things that we don't get to choose. And without physical force or altercation of some sort, purposeful on our own part, we cannot change them. Behavioral characteristics are, by contrast, ever-changing. If a child, for example, disrupts class and they're reminded or they're reprimanded for their behavior, or at least asked to change their behavior. See, we can reject certain forms of behavior, right? And that's appropriate, considering circumstances. There are certain behavioral standards required for public school to function, right? Students, they must adhere to teachers and staff's authority for the sake of order. For example, they shouldn't be allowed to, disrupt other students while a teacher is in the middle of a lesson, for example. That's obvious. These are things we expect our students to conform to, or behaviors we expect them to conform to. Students should be expected to respect other students by not bullying, and that could take the form of physical or emotional bullying. right? It can happen online, it can happen in the hallway or in the cafeteria. They're expected not to do this, right? To curtail their behaviors, to fit this, or to modify to a civil form, of order. Behaviors in line with acknowledging everyone's basic right to human dignity. Those are behaviors we expect of our students. Our values, right? They come, or our deeply held values. From those come our behaviors. Okay. And I look around this room and I see a bunch of different values. So I would ask that we recognize everyone's human dignity here and remember that we can oppose certain behaviors, right? Sexually explicit content like they're talking about here, those are behavioral, okay? And they're not accepted, in school. 18-year-olds are not allowed to view that kind of content.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Appreciate that.
Okay, at this time, public comments are closed. We thank you very much for your input tonight, and we will make sure that if you had marked that you would like to be contacted regarding your comment, that we will get it to the appropriate person. Superintendent Beam, do you have any closing remarks?
You know what, Dr. Fossen, just really quick, because we're just piloting the program. Let's
Yeah.
make sure we didn't mess up on any of the cards. Did everybody's cards who submitted one get turned in? Okay, so nobody else wanted
good call.
to speak.
Yep. Okay, great.
Just as we're
Thank
trying
you.
to figure out if this is a functional thing for our
Yeah,
organization. Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you.
My only closing comments are, thanks for sticking with a long meeting. Thanks for everyone coming out. I think we all, I'll pick up on Scott's comments. I think we all share that common desire to respect one another as human beings. Thank you for your patience as we work through these issues on behalf of all of our kids and our great teachers and staff members and families that give so much every day for our next generation. I talked to my daughter tonight, and she knew I was going to another board meeting, and she just said, tell everyone just to be kind and care for one another. And I thought, well, from the mouths of a 10-year-old, maybe that's the best closing remark I've got tonight. So we'll all be kind and care for one another, and the world will be a better place. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. All right, with that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
We are adjourned.